Chapter 1197. As soon as the two heavenly tribulations passed, both Shui Mutian and the sea demons had a plan in their hearts. At this moment, at least 1,000 pairs of eyes from both sides were staring at them. They all saw Han Fei's heavenly tribulation clearly, and they were all shocked. From a moment the first thunderbolt fell, they found that Han Fei's first heavenly tribulation was probably much more powerful than the last heavenly tribulation. With a single strike, the four monarch city prodigies were reduced to ashes. Even the heavenly talents of the royal city were annihilated by a bolt of lightning. It could be seen how talented Han Fei was. There was still one merman left. He used his life green scales to block, but he could only barely block the first bolt of lightning. The second heavenly tribulation had just appeared when it was split apart. At this moment, Han Fei swallowed two heavenly tribulations in a row and felt that his war body had been pushed to the limit. Through the breathing technique, the energy devoured had already reached the limit of conversion. At this moment, all the energy in Han Fei's body seemed to be undergoing subtle changes, as if his body was being reconstructed. Not only was the energy demand too high, but even the spiritual spring in Forge the Universe was being consumed spontaneously. All in all, the power of two heavenly tribulations had been swallowed by Han Fei. It seemed that he had reached his limit, but it wasn't enough. Han Fei's body had digested to its full capacity, but the speed of digestion couldn't keep up with the speed of the transformation of his physique. At this moment, the shadow in the sky had already turned bluish-purple, and many of the tribulation clouds had already begun to change color. Wu Shangshui's expression changed. They really came. As long as the law enforcer realm was strong enough, the purple tribulation would come. If Han Fei doesn't die today, he will definitely become a king in the future. Purple tribulation? On the sea race's side, the venerable level powerhouse's face was solemn. He thought to himself, as expected of someone the life Queen values. But why haven't I heard of this guy before? Logically speaking, the sea race should know more or less what kind of experts and prodigies the human race had, and what kind of subordinates the Life Queen had. But where did this Han Fei come from? How did such a prodigy suddenly appear? At this moment, Han Fei was still calm. The higher the talent, the stronger the strength, the greater the tribulation. Throughout history, there had been purple tribulation, but Han Fei's purple tribulation cloud hadn't completely condensed yet. Would he be able to cross it? It was still a problem. Han Fei was a little stunned himself. Wow, I've never encountered such a situation before. Han Fei had helped a lot of people survive tribulations. Han Fei was already good at transcending tribulations. Han Fei had seen the color change in the heavenly tribulation before. However, he had never seen such a complete change. Just a moment ago, it was a F***king blue cloud. Now, how did it turn purple just because it was bouncing around? From the bottom of his heart, the old turtle's voice rang out. Brat, if you have the ability, then go all out. If he managed to survive this tribulation, his golden body would be half complete. At that time, there shouldn't be any explorers in this barren land who can shake your body. The cracks on Han Fei's body were recovering. His vitality was strong, and his chi and blood were surging. As he looked at the sky, he said, "Half of the golden body? What do you mean?" The old turtle cackled. "This is a sublimation of life. After surpassing this realm, you only need to surpass one more realm to break away from the category of humans, and you can call it a golden body." Golden body? The old turtle didn't hide anything. In the path of cultivation, different paths lead to the same destination. In the path of body refinement, forging a golden body is nothing. However, the golden body level belongs to the king. If you can condense a king's golden body in the explorer realm, I don't need to tell you the benefits, right? Hoo. While Han Fei swallowed the surrounding energy, the energy fruits and spiritual spring in Forge the Universe were still collapsing. These energies were being transformed crazily. Originally, Han Fei thought that this was a process of transformation from a peak-level law enforcer to an explorer. However, after hearing what the old turtle said, it didn't seem right. Was this a process of his body evolution? Crack. Rumble, in the sky, 7 or 8 purple thunderbolts appeared at once, which really shocked Han Fei. Why are there so many? However, in the next moment, multiple thunderbolts gathered and struck down. Puff, puff, crack, 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 crack. At that moment, Han Fei felt that his flesh and blood were exploding. Almost every cell in his body was bursting. The moment blood spurted out, it was evaporated by the thunderbolts. His battle robes and hair disappeared without a trace in an instant. Hoo. Swish, swish, swish. Vitality surged crazily, but it couldn't keep up with the speed of the collapse of his body. At the moment when the thunderbolts hit him, Han Fei suddenly understood why the Life Queen wanted to exchange the water of life for resources with him. Even if he didn't die after taking such a thunderbolt, it would take him a few days to recover. However, in this case, he didn't have a few days to slowly recover. Clatter! In the purple thunderbolt, a drop of emerald green liquid collapsed in an instant, turned into gas, and was absorbed into Han Fei's body. Suddenly, a massive amount of vitality gushed out. Han Fei only felt that on his bones and blood, golden spots of light began to appear exponentially. At the moment when the thunderbolt struck, Han Fei felt that at least 1/10 of the blood in his body had turned golden. There were more changes in his bones, and on the crystal clear bones, there were dense golden spots. Oh! A low roar came from Han Fei's throat. Han Fei felt that every part of his flesh and bones was trembling. However, this didn't stop him from being excited. Han Fei thought to himself, this water of life is really awesome. With just one drop, I survived the most difficult tribulation. At this moment, he could still feel the endless vitality. That feeling was countless times faster than the vitality naturally generated by the indestructible body. This feeling was similar to what he felt when he swallowed the sacred fruit of destiny. However, the divine fruit was hard to come by, and he had 10 drops of the spring of life. As long as he survived the heavenly tribulation and became a peak-level explorer, he would have plenty of ways to obtain more resources. However, seriously injured, before Han Fei had time to get excited, the old turtle's voice suddenly sounded, "Boy, use the remaining 9 drops of spring water." Han Fei was speechless. Han Fei's face was almost blown off. At this moment, only the flesh was puzzled. What does he mean? This time, before the old turtle spoke, a big octopus suddenly tried to tear the void and attack Han Fei. "Get lost!" Wushang Shui's cold voice echoed. "Who wants to force me to kill today?" Jing said to him via voice transmission, "Han Fei, don't be stingy with the spring of life. You still have a heavenly tribulation. No matter what, you must get through it." Han Fei was stunned. Aren't there only 3 heavenly tribulations? When Han Fei's flesh and skin had just regrown, he saw Jing taking a step forward and lashing out with a long whip in her hand. The Insect King shouted, "Han Fei, this is the 4th tribulation, commonly known as the 4-9 Kings tribulation. This means that the heavenly Tao recognizes that you have the potential to become a king. So this last tribulation is extremely difficult." Han Fei was shocked. The 4-9 Kings tribulation? I've never heard of it. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle's voice was indifferent. What's there to be surprised about? I've long guessed that there would be this tribulation. The only thing I'm surprised about is that everything seems to be going well for you, boy. Once you pass this tribulation, it means that you have unlimited potential. As long as you don't die, there is a high chance that you will become a king. Han Fei took a breath. Do I need a F***king heavenly tribulation to tell me? I knew a long time ago. The old turtle was speechless. Don't be smug. Not everyone can resist the 4-9 Kings tribulation. You were lucky enough to survive the 3 thunderbolts because you have a solid foundation and a strong physique. However, if one were to forcefully resist the 4th thunderbolt, there was a high chance that even geniuses would be struck to death. But you are different. You have the spring of life, which can increase your lifespan by 900 years. You can swallow the 4th tribulation by force. Han Fei's face hadn't fully grown yet, so it was hard to tell whether it was dark or not. However, the resources that he had just bought with all his savings yesterday, were now consumed by him. 5 seconds later, when Han Fei's eyes were reborn, he didn't even notice that his appearance seemed to have grown a little better after this tribulation. It wasn't that his appearance had changed, but his skin had become whiter and even glowed faintly. His temperament was also developing a little like old Han's. Of course, this was not the time to study his appearance, because the tribulation cloud in the sky had changed. The third tribulation cloud was still purple, but at this moment, the tribulation cloud had changed to red. Fortunately, the range of the tribulation cloud had changed from 1,000 kilometers to about 500 kilometers. However, the standard of the energy absorbed by the lightning tribulation had exceeded 1,000 kilometers. Hiss! On the battlefield, a bug exclaimed, "Why hasn't the tribulation ended yet? Why is there a fourth one?" A human exclaimed, "Oh my God! Is it the legendary heavenly tribulation? The one who transcends the tribulation of a king can be called a half-king." What? Our Shuemu heaven is going to have a new king? A heavenly talent of the Sea clan changed his expression drastically. How is it possible? He must be a rare genius that only appears once in 1,000 years, right? A human powerhouse shouted angrily. Envoy Jing is also transcending the heavenly tribulation. Sure enough, the queen values Han Fei. Everyone, kill the enemy. On the fearless battlefield, a Tao-seeking state demon and the fearless tree demon fought to the death. Sea spirit state creatures fought in the dark waters. Peak-level explorers fought on the battlefield outside the heavenly tribulation. A peak-level Tao-seeking state demon tried to step into the range of the heavenly tribulation and force it to change. However, strong masters of the Shuemu heaven rushed out one after another. Swish! 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 Yu Chen shouted, "If you dare to provoke me again, believe it or not, I will become a nascent soul today." The Bug King had never moved. His voice rippled. "I like to see who can touch a hair of his under my watch." 1,000 kilometers away from where Han Fei was, there was a fierce battle, and he himself couldn't be distracted at all. The red lightning was about to fall. Second update. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1198. Rumble. The red lightning was obviously beyond normal people's understanding of the heavenly tribulation. At the moment when the tribulation arrived, Han Fei had already soaked himself in a pool of spiritual spring water. In the end, because he was a little stingy, Han Fei gritted his teeth and only threw 8 drops of the spring of life around himself, and he didn't dare to use the last drop. Even so, Han Fei was almost stunned in an instant. He didn't know whether he was alive or dead. When the last tribulation arrived, the only thing Han Fei had time to do was to throw little Fatty into the bottom of the sea. He thought, "I probably won't die, but what if I die? I'll call little Fatty out first. If I die, someone will save me." Han Fei thought he was vigilant and prepared in advance. Sure enough, as soon as the red lightning came, he was killed. It wasn't that he lost consciousness, but that his flesh and blood began to scatter. The indestructible body was still running, and the swallowing method was still frantically absorbing the energy in the lightning. However, Han Fei could only swallow the energy subconsciously. He seemed to find that he couldn't feel his face and mouth. Not only that, but he also felt that his body was sticky, as if his collapsed flesh and blood were reassembling. Terrifying energy was constantly pouring into this small ball. Han Fei's perception at the moment was limited to his own body. At that moment, Han Fei's bones were covered with spots of golden light. However, every time Han Fei felt that his vitality was expanding to the extreme and he tried to repair his broken body, the terrifying energy instantly burst Han Fei's meridians. Han Fei didn't know or feel the repeated collapse of his meridians and flesh at this moment. He didn't even know where his limbs were. Han Fei felt that he seemed to be recovering. He felt that he had hands and feet, but he couldn't get up. He seemed to be squatting on the ground, and his whole body was squeezed into a ball. He guessed that some of his flesh and blood were collapsing and exploding. However, he didn't panic at all. 8 drops of the spring of life. He had spent almost all his wealth on himself. If I can still die like this, what am I supposed to do? However, what Han Fei didn't know was that after being scoured by the terrifying energy of the red lightning over and over again, the crystal-clear meridians were no longer growing after being shattered again and again. Instead, for some unknown reason, the seed that had been hanging in his dantian was enveloped by a black mist and shattered. Hiss! The pupils of the old turtle, who had been in the depths of Han Fei's consciousness, constricted and his heart trembled. What's going on with this kid? How had he managed to walk two different paths? Before the invincible realm, he took another path? At this moment, the old turtle smacked his lips. Dual meridians, that's rare. One was a heavenly vein inheritance, and the other was a level 9 spiritual vein. He clearly has two peerless meridians, but one is unawakened and the other is broken. Doesn't that mean he has no meridians to use now? The old turtle was a little surprised to find that the seed that Han Fei had just shattered didn't seem to be weak. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to survive until now under the strong pressure of the road to the invincible realm. But at this moment, when Han Fei was transcending the tribulation, a naturally bred spiritual seed was shattered, and so was the level 9 spiritual vein. The old turtle thought to himself, if they're all broken, won't Han Fei become a big meatball in the future? He probably won't even be able to put his body back together. However, the next moment, the old turtle was furious. Huh, damn it, you can't. My great Tao. Thief, don't use my great Tao. In the old turtle's roar, he saw that a golden path was crushed inch by inch. Shameless. Robber, you're stealing. You broke my Tao just to help a little brat rebuild his meridians? The old turtle was furious. However, the demon purification pot didn't listen to the old turtle. It could be seen that the energy fruits, spiritual spring, and the spiritual energy contained in the black pearl and the demon purification pot, as well as the remains of the creatures that he looted, the seasonings that he planted, and the drop of water of the spring of life that he secretly saved, were all shattered at this moment. The demon purification pot seemed to be extremely short of energy and had used up all the resources that could be used in Forge the Universe. And in that mass of flesh and blood, a clear blue vein began to slowly appear. As that vein became more and more complicated, a brand new spiritual vein was born. The old turtle trembled and shivered. I see. It's not that he can't survive this disaster, but that you forcibly attracted this disaster in order to shatter his Tao seed and spiritual vein. What the hell are you? The 3 small vines of the demon purification pot swayed gently, as if nothing happened. However, in the eyes of the old turtle, he was already dumbfounded. What exactly is this gourd? If it's that kind of top-level treasure, why haven't I heard of it? Han Fei felt that everything was very natural. Before, he thought that he must have been dazed by the lightning. So, he didn't feel where his hands and feet were. Now, when the endless energy was swallowed, he finally felt his hands and feet. Although they were still a little soft, he didn't panic. As long as he could feel them, it meant that his hands and feet were still there. After another moment, Han Fei felt that he should have made it. He could already look inside and see his bones. His whole body had turned a faint golden color. However, the color was not deep enough, which made Han Fei a little unhappy. Didn't they say that his body was half golden? I thought it was half golden and half white. It turned out that the color was just a little lighter. Han Fei didn't care, but then he found that his meridians seemed to be a little wrong. Huh, why can't I feel the existence of meridians? Well, they're still there. Could it be that I haven't fully recovered? No, why has my blood turned golden? Gold isn't expensive? Can't I bleed freely in the future? Hey. Suddenly, Han Fei was shocked. Where's my seed? Where's my seed? Han Fei looked inside and saw that the heaven spirit detoxifying insect had begun to spin with the demonic energy. As for his seed, why was it gone? Did something happen just now that I don't know? When Han Fei's flesh and blood grew back, and his eyes and hair all grew back, he raised his hand and felt it slightly. Bam! As Han Fei clenched his fist, the void exploded slightly. F*CK. How did I become so strong? Han Fei subconsciously looked at the demon purification pot. He was shocked by what he saw. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 70, Junior Explorer. Spiritual energy 120001/120001. Spiritual power 20001/20001. Perception range greater than 1,668 kilometers. Law Enforcer, invincible, strength greater than 198 waves. First spiritual heritage, unknown. Second spiritual heritage, unawakened. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 59. Second spiritual beast, unawakened. Main art, sky stealing technique. Level 6 of void fishing. Venerable level, divine quality. Hiss. Han Fei was stunned. Of course, he knew that it was a huge leap from a peak level law enforcer to an explorer. It was an improvement in life level. To put it bluntly, no matter how weak an explorer was, he was far stronger than an ordinary heavenly talent law enforcer. Of course, Han Fei was an exception. After all, when Han Fei was a law enforcer, he was not an ordinary heavenly talent law enforcer, but a law enforcer with the potential to become a king. Once, Han Fei and Shimin Linglan calculated that the weakest law enforcer who became an explorer after a tribulation had more than 50 waves. Usually, most of them were 70 or 80 waves, and very few could reach 100 waves. And when Han Fei was a peak-level law enforcer, his strength was only 54 waves. Even after 4 years in the Wind and Rain Village, his strength was only 76 waves. In terms of strength alone, even a freakishly strong heavenly talent like him could only rival a junior explorer if he didn't rely on secret methods. As far as Han Fei knew, the limit of his strength after this breakthrough was about 120 waves. This was not a wild guess, but a conclusion based on his experience on the Avenger. At the beginning, he could reach more than 100 waves. Then, when he was a peak-level junior explorer, he might be able to reach more than 200 waves. Of course, with his conditions, it shouldn't be difficult for a peak-level junior explorer to reach the huge strength of 200 waves. But the scary thing was that after transcending a heavenly tribulation, his strength was close to 200 waves. This number had even reached the level of the most ordinary intermediate explorer. This time, there was no secret method to enhance it. Compared with the increase in strength, the strength of his spiritual power and soul didn't seem very outstanding. His perception range only increased by more than 300 kilometers, which wasn't too much. Just when Han Fei was wondering if he should continue to consolidate his strength, all of a sudden, he froze. He suddenly noticed a special message. Why did his first spiritual heritage become unknown? Where's my level 9 spiritual heritage? Why is it unknown? Han Fei immediately looked inside and fell for a while, only to find that his meridians seemed to have changed. In his brand new meridians, spiritual energy and energy shuttled back and forth extremely fast, without any jerkiness. Why is it so smooth? Wait, what kind of meridians are these? Han Fei suddenly widened his eyes, no longer looking inside, but directly looked at his arm and pinched his meridians with his hand. Gulp! After a long time, Han Fei slowly swallowed. He seemed to have discovered something extraordinary, although he seemed to have broken through the 4th level of the indestructible body art. But his meridians seemed to have been refined by himself. Or to be exact, they were fake. He couldn't even pinch them with his fingers, but they really existed. Han Fei immediately took a breath. Is it because my body hasn't fully recovered? Don't panic, I still have a drop of the spring of life. But the next moment now, where's my spring of life? Where's my spiritual fruit? Where's my spiritual spring? Where's my rice? Chapter 1199. To be honest, Han Fei was dumbfounded at that time. His first reaction was, it's fake. How could the things he had hidden and forged the universe be gone? Not only were the treasures gone, but even the hot pot he usually ate was gone. The entire forged the universe became clean, and even the turf was gone. The top quality materials that he had yet to forge, the fish skin array diagram that he had drawn, the black bead that he had yet to use, and even the evil book of sirens that he had obtained. Anyway, they were all gone. It didn't make sense. In Forge the Universe, he should have used the spirit awakening fluid that was kept for the bootlickers and a nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. The old turtle, it must be the old turtle. This old guy knows the existence of the demon purification pot. Maybe he has discovered the secret of Forge the Universe. While I'm having a tribulation, he stealthily stole my resources. Han Fei roared, "Old turtle, son of a B***, come out. Tell me, did you steal my things?" The old turtle was licking his wounds alone. His Tao was abruptly obliterated by someone else. He used his Tao as the foundation for a little B** starred meridians. Was there anything more outrageous than this in the world? Suddenly, Han Fei howled like a madman and made a lot of noise. How could the big turtle tolerate that? Han Fei roared, "I know it's you. Except for you, there is no one else on me. I can tolerate you stealing my ingredients. I can tolerate you stealing my seasonings, and I can pretend that I didn't see you stealing my pearls. But how could you steal the only spiritual fruits and the spring of life that I have?" The old turtle roared, "Little B** starred, don't be a bloody basin mouth turtle. I stole your things? Who do you think I am? It was you who robbed me of my Tao. If it weren't for this little calabash, I would have swallowed you." Han Fei bared his teeth. "Okay, you want to swallow me in one gulp? You have a lot of drama, don't you? Calabash, suck him to death. Suck this B** star to death." However, the demon purification pot didn't move, which made Han Fei more embarrassed. The old turtle roared, "Little B** starred, just you wait. Originally, since you used this Emperor's great Tao, this Emperor could still guide you on account of this relationship. Now, I won't say a single word. Are you surprised that your level 9 spiritual pulse is gone? Have you discovered that your Tao seed has been broken? Have you discovered that there is something wrong with you? Ha! I won't tell you." Han Fei. Han Fei wondered if he had misunderstood the turtle. Wait, what else does the old turtle know? Han Fei couldn't help but lower his voice. "Alas, do you know what's going on? Tell me. If you don't tell me, how do I know you didn't steal anything?" Scram! The old turtle's voice was like thunder, making Han Fei's head buzz. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. The old turtle seemed to be really angry. The problem was, why was it angry? Could it be that it was still angry about its great Tao? Wasn't that thing stolen by the demon purification pot 4 years ago? There was no need for him to be angry until now. Han Fei thought about it and really couldn't understand this turtle. Forget it. Let's get out first. I wonder how the fight outside is going. When Han Fei broke through a spring that wrapped him, he was suddenly stunned. In his eyes, thunder rumbled and lightning arcs fell from the sky. Boom! As soon as Han Fei came out, he was immediately hit by lightning. However, unlike just now, he was a peak-level enforcer and was about to undergo a tribulation. Then what was this? Was this still a tribulation? Han Fei didn't feel it was difficult at all. He even reached out and scratched his head. The power of lightning seems to be nothing now. Am I used to it? As soon as he released his perception, Han Fei immediately found that the area where this part of lightning was located was less than 300 kilometers. The reason why there was still lightning was because the thick tribulation cloud had accumulated too much before, so it couldn't disperse for a while. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Since it couldn't disperse, why should it disperse? Wouldn't it be better to continue the tribulation? Anyway, he had already come to this point. Because of him, the Sea Clan and the Shuemu Heaven were at war. There was no such thing as a guilty conscience or an inner demon that hindered the great path of cultivation. If it were in the past, even a battle for resources in the village could become a mental demon for Han Fei. But now, he didn't even know if he still had a heart. Mental demons? Immediately, Han Fei said in his heart, "Punishing Saber, Tree Spirit, come out." With Han Fei's current strength, he could actually summon the 5 of them together. However, could they transcend a tribulation together? As soon as the Punishing Saber and the Tree Spirit came out, with a bang, the Tree Spirit was directly cut through. Then, in an instant, smoke began to rise. Of course, this was just ordinary lightning, not the so-called lightning tribulation. Of course, it couldn't kill the Tree Spirit at once. Otherwise, it would be too much of an exaggeration to say that he was a legendary creature. The Tree Spirit was dumbfounded. He looked up and asked, "Master, are you done with your tribulation?" Han Fei said, "Take the opportunity to transcend the tribulation." The punishing saber trembled slightly. "Master, we have already reached the peak and have a complementary array. We can actually transcend the tribulation together." Han Fei's heart did a flip. "Oh, will my life be in danger?" The tree spirit's voice was unhurried. "No, the spiritual plants of heaven and earth are blessed. Besides, the defense of Earth 9 is amazing." With a thought, mountains and rivers appeared. Then the fire seed, water swamp, and Earth 9 appeared one after another and floated above the sea. This scene in the lightning tribulation might block the vision of ordinary people, but it definitely couldn't block the eyes of venerables. Good. The Shuemu heaven seems to have prepared for a long time this time. He actually wants to transcend 6 people at once. Come on, break through the tribulation area. Humph, do you think I don't exist? The insect king bellowed. Han Fei saw that the huge body of the insect king began to shrink quickly. But in an instant, it successfully turned into a bald young man about 2 meters tall. Han Fei was shocked to see this. This bald man had a cold face, a shiny bald head, and a sharp armor. His arms, legs, elbow joints, and the back of his head were all covered with black sharp blades. Is this the human form of the insect king? It looks like a bloody killer. However, this was not the end. In Han Fei's eyes, the insect king split open, and a new insect king appeared. The insect king pointed its knife at the void and said in an unruly voice, "No matter how many venerables there are, I'll kill anyone in the Tao-seeking state who dares to cross the line." The mantis shrimp that had been confronting the insect king before also had a way to transform into a human. Its shape was even weirder than the insect king's. 2 limbs grew out from its back. It could be seen that although these venerables had transformed into humans, they were far from being like real people. Or rather, they needed this half-human and half-demon state to fight. The insect king bellowed, "The Shuemu heaven has never been afraid of a fight." The 2 venerables didn't attack immediately, and the venerable on the other side roared, "What a tribulation battle! The Shuemu heaven must have put in a lot of effort for this tribulation, right? In this case, let's see if you can stop the strong masters of the Sea Clan in this battle." In an instant, Han Fei felt the void tremble. Then, a shocking crack appeared 500 kilometers away. When he looked again, the insect king and the mantis shrimp venerable were nowhere to be seen. Han Fei took a breath. It's all the fault of the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Look at them. They are both mantis shrimp, but they are already venerables. However, as soon as the venerables left, the situation outside the Fearless City wall was hard to predict. 1,000 kilometers behind Han Fei was the Fearless Barrier, and the Fearless Tree was rooted in mid-air. A streak of green light pierced an old turtle's body. The old turtle's rock-hard shell was completely useless against the attack. Starting from his turtle shell, a piece of green seaweed-like seaweed suddenly grew out. With a low scream, the turtle was soon covered by the seaweed. No matter how it struggled, even if it tore the void, it couldn't stop the erosion of its soul and body. Of course, the price of killing the Sea Clan powerhouse was that after the Fearless Tree launched this weird parasitic attack, the tree immediately began to wither and wither. In the end, it directly became a dead branch on the seabed and would soon be decomposed and nibbled by plankton. Because of the departure of the venerable, an old tree soon stood up from a seabed on the Fearless City wall. It was also a venerable, but he was protecting the Fearless Barrier. Seeing that Han Fei had successfully transcended the tribulation, a Tao-seeking state creature shouted, "Han Fei, do you dare to fight?" At this moment, all kinds of perceptions swept over. Everyone found that Han Fei's body was broken like a porcelain doll, and he walked out of the heavenly tribulation with a limp leg. Yu Chen, who had been paying attention to Han Fei, shot an arrow through the void and said via voice transmission, "Why is someone still transcending the tribulation?" Liu Hanley of the Flying Feather Clan, who had met Han Fei once, also shattered the void with his sword and tried to rush to Han Fei. However, there was a golden-winged flying fish in midair, and its thousands of scales spread out the power of its domain. A big bubble wrapped the two of them in the void again. Someone shouted, "Why is there still a creature transcending the tribulation?" At this moment, the tribulation clouds in the sky didn't disperse. Instead, they were colorful, as if rays of light had penetrated from billions of kilometers away. However, Han Fei was already penniless at this moment. He didn't have any belongings. Han Fei shouted, "Everyone, if anyone can lend me some resources, I will pay you back double in the future." Han Fei's shout attracted everyone's attention. Someone took a breath. This person is not dead yet. He survived the 4-9 King Tribulations. However, Han Fei's miserable appearance also fell into everyone's eyes. How could the King Tribulations be easy to transcend? At this moment, Han Fei must be at the end of his tether. He had exhausted all his resources and was now borrowing. A big bird from the Sky Clan rushed over. "Here you go." A sea-swallowing seashell pierced through the sky. Swish, swish. It meant that dozens of arrows were shot out with sea-swallowing seashells hanging on them. Han Fei was overjoyed, and the phantom grabbed at the void with its big hand. Immediately, a mid-level Tao-seeking state powerhouse rushed over. After all, Han Fei had never killed a powerhouse of this level head-on before. That half-mermaid was proud that he was almost 2 major realms higher than Han Fei. Besides, he also had a secret method, so he shouldn't be any worse than Han Fei. Besides, Han Fei was seriously injured now, so he couldn't be allowed to get resources. Although you have transcended the heavenly tribulation, you can't escape death. As soon as this person shouted, there were fierce shouts from all directions. It was mainly because Han Fei was too fierce before he transcended the tribulation. The 5 heavenly talents of the royal city directly lost him because of the heavenly tribulation. In a head-on battle, Han Fei was strong and domineering. In the battle for the heavenly tribulation, the Sea Clan was completely defeated. At this moment, the heavenly tribulation had just passed, and Han Fei was obviously seriously injured. If he didn't take action now, when would he? Han Fei looked fierce. "Even if I'm seriously injured, how can you small fries defeat me? Get out of here." First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1200. In the blink of an eye. The moment Han Fei walked out of the Thunder Tribulation, many strong masters came from all directions. Some wanted to protect Han Fei, some wanted to kill Han Fei, and some started fighting halfway. Compared with breaking through the fearless barrier, these sea demons prefer to fight normally with people of the same realm. After all, the old trees guarding the fearless barrier all had the will to die. They all had the idea that killing one was not a loss, and killing two was a gain. And Han Fei's side seemed to be much less dangerous. The purpose of this battle was to hunt Han Fei. This purpose was so clear that there was no need to hide it at all. Now, Han Fei's appearance was appalling. It seemed that he could be broken into pieces with a push of his hand. Of course, countless strong masters of the Sea Clan flocked to him. This was a person who had passed the 4-9 King Tribulations, a peerless heavenly talent that no one in the same realm could defeat. In the void, tranquility was blocked by 2 figures. However, she was not in the mood to fight. Instead, she said disdainfully, "Do you really think the person valued by Her Majesty is only this capable?" Someone sneered. "How can it be so easy to pass the 4-9 tribulations? Why don't you let the Sea Clan heavenly talent kill him?" Outside the tribulation cloud vortex, Han Fei had no weapon in his hand. He looked at the half-mermaid rushing at him. There was a giant scorpion tail on the harpoon piercing through the void. Bam! Crack! In the next second, Han Fei grabbed the harpoon with both hands and seemed to have barely blocked the scorpion tail's blow. Several cracks appeared on his chest. Stinky fish and shrimps don't deserve to fight me. However, the golden fist mark was not inferior to the sacrificing punch at all. The punch shattered the half-mermaid's divine battlesuit, although it twisted the laws of space and tried to resist Han Fei. However, in terms of spatial laws, the shifting stars was much stronger than the laws of space. Both were laws. It didn't mean that one's talent was better than others. Puff! Han Fei inserted one hand into the half-mermaid's body and clasped his hands. Rip! A rain of blood poured down. Han Fei roared and looked around. Who else? The people of the Flying Feather Clan who were preparing to rescue Han Fei were speechless. You're so King injured, and you're still so arrogant? Why are you still so arrogant? However, Yu Qin thought to himself, that's not right. At this moment, it didn't even take him half a breath to kill an intermediate explorer. This increase in strength was not just a little bit, right? Besides, he knew that Envoy Jing would personally protect Han Fei. However, both Messenger Jing and Revered Snow were nowhere to be seen. Was this how it looked like he was protecting her? If they wanted to leave, could the Sea Demon Venerable really stop them? Yu Chen's heart skipped a beat. Is he doing this on purpose? He shouted right away, it's fine. Just stop a peak stage Dao Seeker. Han Fei glanced around. Why did the people who were supposed to protect him retreat? However, he did not panic at all. Looking at the more than 20 people rushing over from all directions, he shouted loudly, just these few people? Are you looking down on me? Pung pung. Han Fei soared into the sky, and his fists were like dragons. Every time a golden fist mark appeared, the waves would rise and the void would explode. Someone cut a deep wound on Han Fei's body with a knife. However, with a flip of his hand, a kitchen knife swept over and directly cut it in half. A big turtle pressed down like a mountain. Han Fei, boy, look at my mystic turtle sea suppression technique. In the sky, a 100-meter-long turtle shadow smashed through the void and suppressed Han Fei. Huh! Han Fei's face changed drastically. His arm was full of cracks, and his fist glowed red. Break! That punch forcibly blasted through the turtle shell, and the old turtle died. It was speechless. Wasn't Han Fei already dead? Why was his combat power still so strong? Someone shouted, Han Fei is at the end of the line. Everyone, let's work together. Han Fei shouted, even if I die today, I'll cut you under my feet. What he said made it sound like it was true. At this time, Han Fei was thinking, why are there so few of them? Give me some more. Bam, 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 bam. In the 100-kilometer battle, the waves were surging, the sky was full of golden fish shadows, and occasionally there were knife marks tearing the sky. From time to time, Han Fei could be seen being hit by a hammer, and his body was covered with cracks. After killing only 10 people, Han Fei seemed to be about to collapse at any time. Someone shouted, put in more effort, add more oil, and kill him with blood. 100 minutes later, there were only 3 or 5 people left in the field. Someone was speechless. Why isn't he broken yet? However, Han Fei didn't seem to be faking his chi and blood at this moment. Han Fei wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and roared, now that I've made a breakthrough, do you think a bunch of Dao-seeking state monsters can kill me? Boom, boom. All of a sudden, the second bolt of 5-colored lightning descended. The terrifying lightning didn't seem to be much weaker than Han Fei's 4 Nine Kings tribulation. The punishing saber and the other 4 had profound foundations. When they were facing the first tribulation, although it was colorful, they were able to resist it with their true bodies, and nothing happened to them. As a matter of fact, during the second bolt of lightning, the 5 of them each used their own techniques, using an invisible method to support one another. Water luster froze the tree spirit as if it were wearing heavy armor. The tree spirit injected countless branches into the fire seed, and the fire seed burst into flames. With the essence fire, the fire seed melted the void, and Earth 9 hid in the void gap. Half of the punishing saber was inserted into the strange stone, and the lightning struck the punishing saber. The lightning seeped into the stone through the strange stone. After the lightning, the punishing saber slashed the sky and shattered half of the lightning tribulation. The rest of the lightning was swallowed and refined by water luster. Seeing this scene, Han Fei was enlightened. The 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other. He wondered if it was his mother who caught the punishing saber and the others and threw them in. This was a little too ferocious. Suddenly, someone shouted, forget about Han Fei. Let's see who's in the heavenly tribulation. Hearing this, Han Fei immediately shouted, "Crab, if you provoke me again, I'll kill you first." However, the crab didn't care at all. Han Fei was really not easy to defeat. Although he had just become an explorer, his body was so strong that he couldn't be shaken even if there were cracks all over his body. At this moment, the crab's giant pincers reached into the tribulation clouds. Swish! A figure flickered in the air. Han Fei actually crossed nearly 500 kilometers of the void in an instant and arrived directly. This, not good, he's pretending. Damn it. Bam! A shocking sledgehammer fell from the sky. Crack! Crack! The crab's pincers were shattered. Before the crab had time to escape, it was punched into its shell by Han Fei. Then, the crab's vitality declined, and the air of death around it became intense. Hey, who told you not to play by the rules? Who told you that you have so many ideas? You could die now. The so-called cracks on Han Fei's body surface were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. That was just a fake scene caused by him activating the indestructible body just now. In fact, Han Fei was full of energy at this moment. He could fight for an entire day and night without feeling tired. Hum, hum, hum. A group of Tao-seeking state monsters retreated quickly. Someone exclaimed, "Impossible! You just passed the heavenly tribulation. How can you be safe and sound?" Han Fei curled his lips and laughed. "Do you think I'm as useless as you? What can a mere heavenly tribulation do to me? I feel like I can kill a peak Tao-seeking expert with a single punch. Is there any such expert who would like to fight me?" Oomph. A sound wave shattered the void and blasted directly in front of Han Fei. Han Fei's eyes turned cold, and he stomped, and a King Kong giant appeared behind him. With his soft snort, Han Fei was pushed back 1,000 meters in midair, his face dark. Han Fei gritted his teeth and grinned. "The Venerable One is going to attack me personally? In the future, don't let me find an opportunity. Otherwise, I'll sweep through your sea spirit realm." At this moment, the colorful light in the sky was even more dazzling. Many people were confused and had no idea what was going on inside. They were surprised that since Han Fei had come out, who else was undergoing a tribulation inside? Han Fei had mixed feelings. Even though he had invested all of his family's assets in this wave, he was still a little worried. However, his overall strength and confidence had indeed become much stronger. The 5 legendary advanced explorers, and he was one of them. From now on, the explorers wouldn't be invincible, but they wouldn't have to worry about being hunted down at will. In any case, the explorers represented the top forces of the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. As long as the Venerables didn't show up, the explorers could almost dominate the 2 domains. At this moment, the light bursting out of the punishing blade and the other 4 dyed the sky in 5 colors. So from the outside, it looked like a 5-color lightning tribulation. In fact, this was Earth 9 covering the other 4 spirits with its own power. The tree spirit and the others tried their best to feed Earth 9 back. That was why such a marvelous scene appeared. Oomph. No matter who is undergoing a tribulation, come out. A peak-level Tao-seeking expert pierced the sky with a spear and stabbed at Han Fei. Han Fei sneered. "Do you think you can see it just because you want to? Who do you think you are?" Han Fei took a breath, activated the Beast King art, and punched out. The terrifying power and the power of the spear exploded at the same time. Wow! Han Fei took 7 or 8 steps back and felt his own strength. There was a bloodstain on his fist. This meant that the power of his punch was still a little weak. However, he didn't panic at all. Just now, he didn't use all his strength. How is it possible? How can a beginner explorer match a peak-level, Tao-seeking expert? Many explorers of the Flying Feather Clan exclaimed and fought crazily, especially Yu Chen, who shouted in a low voice, "How dare you be distracted by my arrow? Today, I'll kill you to prove my Tao." Rip! In the air, there was a dazzling flash like a star flashing in front of him. Immediately afterward, there was a ding sound of an explosion more than 300 miles away. Crack! 1 arrow to break the barrier, 2 arrows to seize the soul. Yu Chen appeared out of thin air, and pointed the longbow in his hand. Han Fei could only see two black spots appearing in the void. Then, the head of the shrimp soldier, who had barely blocked Yu Chen's arrow, suddenly exploded. At that moment, spiritual energy surged over from 1,000 kilometers away. Yu Chen stood proudly in the void. He was about to enter the Tao. Rumble. At this moment, the lightning tribulation also descended. 5-colored mystic light hit the sky together. The tree spirit and the others managed to hold on for 3 breaths and were unscathed. At this moment, Wushang Shui stepped out and threw the spiritual spring and energy at Yu Chen as if they were worthless. At the same time, a drop of the spring of life was injected into Yu Chen's body. After that, Wushang Shui looked at Han Fei with a complicated expression. Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1201. Wushang Shui guessed that Yu Chen's breakthrough at this time must have put too much pressure on him. After all, he was about to become a venerable. It would be fine if he was challenged by Han Fei. The reason why Wushang Shui sent him to the fearless barrier to kill a peak-level Tao-seeking state cultivator was to make Yu Chen feel better. However, on the second day after Yu Chen came to the fearless battlefield, Han Fei also arrived. Not only did Han Fei arrive, but he also transcended the tribulation in front of him. That wasn't all. In this battle, Han Fei had made a killing. The 4-9 Kings tribulation was definitely a rising star. On this day, how many people were shocked? In fact, the main mission of the Flying Feather Division's elites today was to assist Jing in suppressing the situation. Well, Yu Chen was about to enter the Tao. He felt that if he didn't make a breakthrough, Han Fei might be able to fight him head-on. Chirp, someone entered the Tao, which was the same as Han Fei transcending the tribulation. The Sea Clan panicked when another venerable appeared in the Shuimu heaven. They had vowed to destroy Han Fei's tribulation. However, not only did they fail to destroy the tribulation, but they also sent a venerable to the Shuimu heaven. Who could tolerate that? Immediately, a white-eyed wild eagle broke through the void and shouted, "Jinger, retreat!" Buzz, buzz, buzz. At that moment, Serenity, the insect king, Wushang Shui, the white-eyed wild eagle, and hundreds of explorers of various clans all retreated to the periphery of the fearless barrier. The tribulation clouds in the sky had quickly dissipated. Han Fei entered the tribulation clouds with the star transposition technique. As soon as the mountain and sea painting unfolded, the 5 legends, including the tree spirit, were all taken into the sea-quelling painting. At that moment, the punishing saber said, "Master, if possible, can you give us some resources? We've consumed a lot of energy in this tribulation." Han Fei casually threw the resources he just asked for. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he thought, "I don't even have any resources now. I don't even have a spiritual fruit." Han Fei frowned and said, "Use them sparingly and stabilize them in the painting. Let me kill a batch of Tao-seeking state monsters, and then I'll give you some resources." Swoosh! The wind blew, the tribulation clouds dispersed, and the eyes of the venerables fell on Han Fei. The venerable one could see tree spirit and the others going through the heavenly tribulations. The venerables on the Waterwood Sky side were only curious. There was a big secret on Han Fei. There were actually 5 special beings following him. Yes, they didn't think the tree spirits were Han Fei's contractual spiritual beasts. Otherwise, wouldn't there be too many contractual spiritual beasts? As for the sea demons, they had already remembered Han Fei. Moreover, someone had already memorized the faces of Tree Spirit and the others. To put it bluntly, from today onwards, Han Fei had been included in the Sea Demon King City's key kill list. At this moment, Yu Chen was seeking a breakthrough. This would probably last for at least an hour, right? There were bound to be supremacies rushing over from Shuimu heaven. After all, the tribulation transcendence technique was useless for the birth of a venerable one. A shark-headed merman shouted, "Waterwood Heaven has 4 battlefields that require protection. It's not that easy to enter the Tao." Wu Shangxue indifferently said, "If you want to fight, then let's fight. As long as you can pass through the fearless barrier." The insect king's voice rippled. Insect Sea Tactic. At the moment the Insect King spoke, a large number of insect clan creatures crawled out of inexplicable holes, coral crevices, and concealment arrays in the dark water. In just an instant, hundreds of thousands of insect clan creatures crawled out of the dark water. The so-called dark water battlefield at this moment was completely one-sided. For the birth of a new venerable, the Insect King revealed all the insects that had been hiding in the dark water for a long time. Almost all of them were hidden fissures, and there were more than 100,000 of them. In the rear, the outcome had been decided, and the one-sided slaughter was about to begin. In the void, the smell of gunpowder was extremely strong. Both sides seemed to be waiting for someone. In the endless sky, a deep voice sounded. "Immortal enchantress, I thought you were helping a junior to pass the tribulation. It turns out that what you're planning is to raise another venerable one? Hey, after 100 years, what do you think of this battle?" Immortal enchantress? Han Fei was puzzled, wondering who the immortal enchantress was. But in the next second, the Life Queen's voice suddenly sounded. "Every time you enter the Tao, there will be a battle. The Shuemu heaven has been preparing for this battle. What can the Baibei kingdom do to me?" Humph. Let's wait and see. This brat is called Han Fei, right? Today, he doesn't need to leave the Shuemu heaven. He'll be killed as soon as he goes out. Han Fei was still surprised. Why was the Life Queen called the immortal enchantress by the sea demons? He suddenly heard that the other side's king mentioned him. At that time, he was dumbfounded. For a moment, Peaceful and the others all looked over. Someone shook his head slightly. Sometimes, it's not a good idea to be too high-profile. Han Fei was just too outstanding. You've passed the 4-9 King tribulation, which is already outstanding enough. Why did you pretend to be weak? Now you're done. You can't go out. Han Fei immediately cursed. Old B** starred. Did I dig your ancestral grave? What does it matter to you whether I go out to sea or not? Silence. Wushang Shui glared at Han Fei. Are you out of your mind? Venerable, it's fine if you curse. After all, I admit that you have the talent of a venerable. But you're AF** King. If the king really left the royal city without a care and fought the Life Queen, it was hard to say whether Yu Chen would be able to survive and whether he would be able to break through to the supremacy stage. Wushang Shui glared at Han Fei. Go back to the Shuemu heaven. What happens here has nothing to do with your tribulation battle. Now, it's a battle to enter the Tao. Han Fei was stunned for a moment, thinking this battle started because of me. How can I leave? Immediately, Han Fei took a breath. I'm very strong now. I'm invincible in the Tao-seeking realm. Everyone, get lost. Wushang Shui glared at Han Fei. You'll only get in the way if you stay here. The Sea Clan will only want to take you and Yu Chen down at the same time. If you want to fight, fight in the Sea of Flames. Peaceful looked at Han Fei. Go! As she spoke, Peaceful's voice resounded through the void. Those who haven't reached the semi-venerable level, fight in other domains. On the battlefield of the Darkwater domain, those who aren't from the Insect Clan, fight in other domains. Han Fei immediately scratched his head. It seemed that the battlefield had changed a bit beyond his expectations. In his heart, the old turtle's reluctant voice sounded. What are you waiting for? The venerable battle is about to begin. What's the point of standing here? Have you reached the semi-venerable level? If you don't, can you withstand a slap from a venerable? F***CK. Han Fei was shocked. So they were going to fight the venerable battle. No wonder something was wrong. Even the Life Queen had come out to speak. At this moment, Han Fei discovered that the Shuemu heaven was not much safer than the Yin-Yang heaven. After all, in the Thousand-Star City, if it weren't for the rebellion of the Thug Academy, no venerable would be seen the next 800 years. However, in the Shuemu heaven, the venerables and peak-level explorers lived and ate with ordinary people. Usually, they would patrol the 4 domains. Therefore, the Shuemu heaven seemed to be passively defending, but battles were more frequent. And the Yin-Yang heaven seemed to be fighting fiercely, but in fact, compared with the Sea Clan, it was a bit small. After all, those who were fighting on the front line were all insignificant soldiers. With a thought, Han Fei seemed to be able to feel that there was an invisible barrier in the void. He stretched out his hand, and the void was torn open. Huh. F***CK. The void was torn open so easily. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. This was much more convenient than finding the weak point of space when he used the heavenly void divine walking technique. Han Fei said, I'm leaving. If Yu Chen hadn't become a venerable, I would have owed the Shamu heaven a venerable big demon. Jing, help me fight back, and I'll give you a Manchu Han imperial feast in the future. He still had to accept the favor that he owed. Although he could safely undergo the tribulation here, because Old Han had a deal with the Life Queen, it was the Insect King, Yu Chen, and Jing who protected him. Not only did they protect him, but they also helped the Tree Spirit and the others. Not only did they protect him, but they also helped the Tree Spirit and the others pass the tribulation. In fact, at this moment, Han Fei could say that his purpose of coming to the Shumu heaven had all been achieved. Except that he was a little poor now. Everything went more smoothly than he imagined. When Han Fei broke the void and rushed all the way to the Shumu heaven, hundreds of creatures rushed with him. A one-horned longhorn beetle flapped its wings and flew to Han Fei. Han Fei, where are you going to fight? Let's go together. Han Fei was taken aback and thought, I don't know this insect. A big green bird flew close. Insect Fei, why don't you go to the whole sea? The big insect buzzed. There are many insect queens guarding the whole sea. Do they need me? No. The whole sea is a place for training soldiers. It lacks explorers and experts. Then I'd better go to the whole sea. The green bird glanced at Han Fei and said coquettishly, I heard that you can turn into a bird? Why don't you try? Han Fei said gloomily, I can't. The green bird didn't believe him. You liar. Forget it. Which territory are you going to? Why don't you not go out? A shocking war is about to break out in the Dark Warport. You can't be taken away now. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Where are you going? The green bird cried coquettishly. The Sea of Fire is not suitable for me. Our Sky Clan will probably choose the Realm of Ice. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. He was not familiar with the whole sea. He was a little familiar with the Realm of Ice and the Sea of Fire. Whether in terms of the strength of the enemy or the resources, the Sea of Fire was better than the Realm of Ice. Wait, suddenly, Han Fei's eyes narrowed. That's not right. It's meaningless for me to stay in the Waterwood Heaven anymore. I've already transcended my tribulation, and so have the Tree Spirit and the others. My purpose of coming to the Waterwood Heaven has been achieved. Besides, I still owe the Life Queen 50 Tao-seeking state big demons. I'm broke. At this time, the most important thing to do is to do what I used to do. What did he do for a living? What else did I do apart from robbery? Han Fei immediately said to the green bird flying beside him. I suddenly remembered something. I'm going to go first. Swish! Under the green bird's astonished gaze, Han Fei disappeared with a swish. The green bird was stunned for a long time and muttered, Sure enough, I can't fall in love unless I'm a bird. The third chapter. The daily chapter. End of this chapter. Chapter 1202. In the sea outside the realm of ice. Han Fei hid in Forge the Universe when he was only about 10,000 kilometers away from the outer sea. As soon as Han Fei entered Forge the Universe, the old turtle's voice came out. The old turtle said, Sure enough, I knew that this space would not be as simple as a storage space. Is it a paradise created by this gore itself? The old turtle's voice was not so sure. After all, the current scope of Forge the Universe was still a bit small. Besides, Han Fei didn't know why. At this moment, Forge the Universe seemed to have been peeled off, and there was nothing left. Even the seeds of ordinary spiritual fruits were gone. Seeing this scene, Han Fei felt that his heart was about to break. This meant that for a long time in the future, he wouldn't even have seasonings to eat. Han Fei couldn't help asking, Aren't you surprised that this space can contain living things? The old turtle sneered. What's there to be surprised about? The reason why sea-swallowing seashells and sun-moon shells can't contain living things is that they are already dead. If living things can still survive in them, it's against the rules of the Great Way. But your gourd, at first glance, is still a living thing. It's actually not a big deal for it to give birth to a space. Logically speaking, with the ability of this gourd, it shouldn't only give birth to such a small space. It may be able to open up a world. The old turtle muttered, but Han Fei didn't know what he was talking about. When he heard the old turtle say that it could give birth to a world, Han Fei thought of something. The demon purification pot should be able to do that, right? Han Fei said calmly. Aren't you surprised at all? Have you seen a lot of soul treasures like this? The old turtle sneered. Why should I tell you? You think about how to kill me every day? Of course I'll listen to you. Han Fei grinned. What are you talking about? I can't kill you, can I? Let's not beat around the bush. Old turtle, you are so strong that it's impossible for me to let you out now. The problem is that the gourd doesn't listen to me. In this case, we can cooperate. What do you think? The old turtle snorted. Cooperate? Do you know how to cooperate with others? Han Fei said leisurely. It depends on who you're talking to. Normally, I would just casually snatch a creature of the same realm as me. But, considering that you're going to stay with me for a long time, perhaps when I become a king, you will still be in my body. Why don't we cooperate now? It's good for both of us. The old tortoise said, Are you sure? Han Fei said unhurriedly, You should at least tell me where my countless spiritual springs and spiritual fruits are, right? We have to build a foundation of mutual trust, right? The old turtle pondered for a moment. I can tell you if you want me to. However, since you're going to rob others, we'll have to decide on the distribution in advance. Otherwise, there's no way to discuss this matter. Han Fei immediately said, Go ahead. Let me hear it. The old turtle's eyes lit up. Go rob them, and all the treasures you get will belong to you. However, the life force of those creatures you killed belongs to me. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. All the vitality belongs to you? You can still devour their vitality now? The old turtle sneered. Nonsense. I came here as a soul. As a result, I was seriously injured by your gourd and could only be trapped here. Without a physical body, I can only rely on the power of my soul. It's because I'm strong that I haven't fallen asleep at this moment. Han Fei frowned. Isn't it inappropriate to devour people's vitality? The old turtle was speechless. Do you think it's inappropriate to devour people's vitality? You've done a lot of wicked things. What's there to be embarrassed about? Han Fei said with a black face. Hey. Speak properly. Don't make personal attacks. If I give you the vitality, what will I eat? The old turtle. In an instant, the two of them were bewildered. The old turtle almost roared. Is my life incomparable to your appetite? Han Fei smiled awkwardly. Don't get too excited. What if you want to harm me after you get the vitality and break free from the shackles? What should I do? The old turtle roared. When my soul was in its heyday, I couldn't harm you. Are you worried that I will harm you now? Shouldn't I be the one who should be worried? The more he spoke, the angrier he became. The old turtle said, No, there is no trust between you and me. You have to swear to the Tao that you can't harm me. Immediately, Han Fei was unhappy. What do you mean by swear? Do you think I'll sell my soul just to know a little bit of information that I'll find out sooner or later? Immediately, Han Fei thought to himself, I must find a way to kill this thing. It's so evil. The old turtle was speechless. He roared, Look at you with your temper. You still have the nerve to say that I am bad? You want to kill me every day, but you say that I'm evil? The old turtle was also speechless. He had been a devil all his life and had never met such a disgusting person. He only wanted to squeeze benefits from him, but he was unwilling to give anything. Since he was a devil, he had to have some conscience. This son of a B*TC. Bah, this kid has no conscience at all. Han Fei froze for a moment. It seemed that the old turtle could hear his thoughts. Forget it, Han Fei didn't care anymore. He said leisurely, Fine, let's not beat around the bush. What you are worried about is whether I will kill you or not. I can guarantee that I won't kill you. To be honest, as I get stronger and stronger, it's only a matter of time before I can control this gourd. That's what you were worried about. In that case, you only need to promise me that you will answer my questions. When I am in danger, you must help me. Just don't try to harm me. The old turtle scoffed. I'm only a wisp of my soul now. How can I help you? Han Fei immediately said disdainfully, "You're lying. Do you think there's no old grandpa living in my body? Even others can help you, but you can't? Why do you keep calling me I? Are you shameless? Okay, don't talk nonsense. I know that it shouldn't be a problem for you to kill a venerable with a single breath. If you agree, let's take an oath." The old turtle was speechless. "Forget it. Don't take an oath. I'm already pissed off by you. If I still had my body, it would be a piece of cake for me to kill a king, let alone a venerable. Look at me. Can I do it now? If I were so powerful now, I would have killed you with a single breath." Han Fei thought about it. "That makes sense." He immediately said, "Then can you take me to escape from a venerable?" The old turtle roared. "Why do you have to make life difficult for a venerable? Did a venerable steal your wife or your treasure? Why don't you take a look at yourself? You keep saying venerable, venerable." Han Fei snorted and said calmly, "Okay, then lower your requirements a little. Once there is a crisis at the venerable level, you must help me get through it. Otherwise, we'll have to go our separate ways. Anyway, I can deal with Tao-seeking level demons by myself now." The old turtle was silent for a long time. "If you want me to help, I must at least have the strength to do it. I need to devour vitality to maintain my soul." Han Fei said, "Swear first." The old turtle said, "Boy, if you want me to swear, okay. However, you have to promise me one thing." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "What is it?" The old turtle snorted. "I can help you, but before you become a king, you can't kill me." Han Fei pondered for a moment. "You have to swear first." Although the old turtle wanted to tear Han Fei apart, he had to lower his head. He had to find a way to establish a cooperative relationship with this kid. Otherwise, he would be killed by this kid sooner or later. Immediately, the old turtle said solemnly, "I swear to the origin that I will answer some of Han Fei's questions that don't involve karma. If my strength allows, I will take action in time when Han Fei is threatened by venerable. Before Han Fei has the intention to kill me, I can't have the intention to harm him. This oath requires Han Fei to also swear. Otherwise, it won't count." Han Fei was stunned for a while, dumbfounded. "That's it?" The old turtle snorted. "I swear to the origin that once you violate this karma, the consequences are not something you can bear. Okay, I'm done. You can tell whether I'm sincere or not." Of course, Han Fei knew what the old turtle meant. If this guy really wanted to kill him, he should have done it when he was in the Wind and Rain Village. It could be seen that this old turtle probably also wanted to kill him. However, there was one thing that Han Fei didn't quite understand. Since the two sides had formed a basis for cooperation, he actually didn't want to kill him every day. In that case, why did the tortoise insist that he not kill it before he became a king? Or could it be that now that he had become a king, he could kill it? Han Fei didn't understand, but it wasn't a big problem. He immediately said, "Okay, I swear to the origin that I will not kill the old turtle before I become a king, and I will provide the old turtle with basic life-prolonging vitality. This oath is based on the fact that the old turtle keeps his word. Otherwise, it won't count." Although he knew that Han Fei had changed some words, such as not killing him to not killing him, and so on. But fortunately, in the eyes of the old turtle, Han Fei was willing to compromise. Neither the old turtle nor Han Fei had expected that their first cooperation as allies would be so childish, almost like children playing house. Even Han Fei didn't know whether the origin would really care about him or not. If he went back on his word, would it really have a big impact? However, thinking of what the heavenly desolate city promised Li Huang and what old Han once said, Han Fei felt that he would rather believe this kind of oath than not. But in any case, he couldn't feed too much vitality to this old turtle. However, since they were already allies, Han Fei immediately asked, "So, why did my resources disappear?" Vertex. Chapter 1203. Faced with Han Fei's question, the old turtle couldn't help but sneer. "Haven't you noticed that there is something wrong with your spiritual heritage?" Han Fei was stunned. "My spiritual heritage doesn't seem to have a problem. Although the level 9 spiritual heritage has become an unknown spiritual heritage, the effect doesn't seem to have become worse. On the contrary, his spiritual energy and energy use efficiency are higher now. The effect of automatically devouring energy and spiritual energy is also better. I wonder if the recovery effect has become better. In short, I feel that everything is good except for the lack of money. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, so, what does the loss of my resources have to do with my spiritual heritage? The old turtle snorted coldly. I don't know whether you should thank your gourd or hate it. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the demon purification pot. What do you mean? The old turtle explained. You have a level 9 spiritual heritage. In a sense, a level 9 spiritual heritage can be called a king heritage. As long as you have a level 7 spiritual heritage or above, you have a chance to become a king. You also have your own Tao seed, and any path that can produce a Tao seed is actually not weak. No, wait a minute. Tao seed? What Tao seed? The old turtle sneered. Haven't you noticed that the seed in your dantian is gone? Han Fei's eyes lit up. So, what's going on? The old turtle said leisurely, your gourd probably despised your Tao seed and level 9 spiritual heritage. So, well, you had a breakthrough in body refinement, infinite vitality, abundant resources, and the support of my Tao. It forcibly shattered your Tao seed and cut off your path. Then, with my Tao as the foundation, I reconnected a meridian for you. Now, do you understand? It's not that your resources are gone, but that all your resources have been used by this gourd to change your destiny. Wow, Han Fei was dumbfounded. No, wait a minute. Slow down. You're saying that my seed is a Tao seed? What's the specific use of a Tao seed? The old turtle chuckled. That's a Tao seed. The existence of a Tao seed means that you will inevitably embark on a Tao. Becoming a venerable is only a matter of time. There is basically no bottleneck. Wow, Han Fei was shocked. What? That little seed can make me become a venerable? Han Fei couldn't have felt better. I don't even know what the seed is for, and it's been crushed by the calabash before I figured it out. But he heard the old turtle say, Humph, little seed, weren't you also a little seed before you were born? Why are you panicking? Don't you have another path to invincibility? Han Fei's eyes lit up. There are seeds on the invincible road too? Was it called an invincible species? How did you do it? The old turtle. He heard a hysterical roar from the bottom of his heart. You still want to get an invincible seed? Why don't you go to heaven? There are millions of people in the world who walk the path of invincibility. If they all give birth to an invincible seed, wouldn't they all be invincible? Han Fei curled his lips. Not bad. The old turtle snorted. There's no such thing as invincibility in this world. Therefore, it is impossible for there to be an invincible species. Han Fei said awkwardly. Okay. Then tell me, what happened to my meridians? Is it still a level 9 spiritual pulse? The old turtle seemed to be gnashing his teeth. However, thinking that it was his own path, he said solemnly, level 9 spiritual pulse? Only the spiritual pulses of mortals will be graded. The spiritual pulses of the real masters will never be graded. Or, they're called heavenly veins, mutated veins, ancient veins, growing spiritual veins, and even the legendary divine veins. To what extent can they grow? It doesn't depend on what the veins are, but how you cultivate them. In the age of gods, some people could cultivate divine veins, even with ordinary veins. In the end, it depends on the person. Han Fei keenly grasped a word. Age of gods. What is the age of gods? Immediately, the old turtle shut up. You can find the answer to this question yourself later. I don't know. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. It seemed that this question was more profound. However, Han Fei didn't panic. Since they had formed an alliance, he would have plenty of time to ask in the future. At least now he knew the ins and outs. It turned out that the demon purification pot thought that his aptitude was not good enough, so it forcibly used resources to give him a better talent. If that was the case, it was not bad. Inexplicably, his talent had become higher, and it had already surpassed the so-called mortal meridian. Such a good thing couldn't be encountered by others even if they wanted to. Although Han Fei still had a lot of things to ask this old turtle, now was not the time. At this moment, a war was breaking out in the Dark Warport. A large number of creatures must have gathered in the 4 domains of the Waterwood Heaven at this moment. For example, When he escaped from the Ice City Wall just now, he hid in Forge the Universe because he sensed a Tao-seeking state monster coming. Of course, Han Fei wasn't here to fight. He would only fight in the Waterwood Heaven if he was forced to. A person as excellent as him, but as poor as he was, should take advantage of this opportunity to go deep into the enemy's camp while the enemy's rear was empty. The old turtle said, although your breath-holding technique is not weak with such a small technique, as long as the enemy has a semi-venerable or a venerable, they will find you immediately. Han Fei said, Humph, what's the hurry? The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. He didn't expect that he would use the Heaven Extended Art again in the Waterwood Heaven. The Heaven Extended Art could transform into 3 kinds of creatures: ordinary sea demons, red demons, and half-mermaids. After the transformation, he would be no different from a real sea demon. The mutation would take 3 days before he could bear another mutation. Of course, Han Fei had already tried the first kind, an Azure Sea Blue Demon. This meant that only at the level of an Azure Sea Blue Demon could he barely be regarded as an ordinary creature in the Sea Clan. As for those ordinary sea monsters and inferior manfish, they were probably not even cannon fodder. This time, Han Fei would certainly directly transform into a half-mermaid. Otherwise, in the Waterwood Heaven, what if the Azure Sea Blue Demons and Red Demons were of that kind of rare species? If so, wouldn't he attract more attention? Han Fei sat on the ground. His face suddenly twisted, and scales began to grow on his body. Wait. Han Fei had been prepared for excruciating pain, but this transformation didn't hurt much except a little discomfort. Is it because a half-mermaid is very similar to a human? The old turtle was surprised. It turns out that you have such a technique. You can transform into all things with a human body. This kind of technique is quite rare. I'm afraid the level of your technique is also very high. It's indeed difficult to detect a venerable. Han Fei was still in the mood to respond. There are many amazing techniques left by our human race. This transformation, unless it's a life-and-death moment, is almost no different from a real sea demon. The old turtle sneered. Then you have to temporarily seal your spiritual heritage. Otherwise, just the fact that you swallow energy naturally will attract the attention of a venerable. Han Fei frowned. Seal, the old turtle said, since your spiritual heritage has surpassed the mortal realm, it should be able to circulate as you wish. However, you haven't learned how to control it yet. Try to suppress the flow of spiritual energy in your spiritual heritage later. Han Fei didn't know if it was because his spiritual heritage had changed too much. This transformation was surprisingly smooth. From the beginning to the end, it didn't even take half an hour. Han Fei glanced at his tail, which flapped on the ground. He felt it was very flexible. However, it was not convenient. Then, spiritual energy surged in his body, and demonic chi burst out. Then his tail split open. The human simulation technique that Han Fei looted finally came in handy. Although he had deduced the human simulation technique to the level of the demon spirit transformation, a half-mermaid would be too similar to a human being. However, if a half-mermaid practiced the demon spirit transformation, it would be too similar to a human being. Besides, the basic requirement of the demon spirit transformation was a level 7 demonic heritage. That was a very high level of demonic heritage. The sea race would definitely work hard to nurture such a prodigy. They wouldn't leave him to roam freely outside. Therefore, Han Fei chose the advanced human simulation technique, which was a little inferior to grow legs, although it looked a little unnatural. Although it looked a bit unnatural, he had already taken a human form, which should be quite common among the Sea Clan. It was neither outstanding nor low level. Han Fei grinned, revealing a mouthful of steel teeth. Now, all he needed was a set of sea demon weapons and clothes. The old turtle said unhurriedly, "Your transformation technique is as smooth as flowing water. Did you do this a lot before?" The old turtle seemed to know that Han Fei's trip wouldn't be easy. Seeing that Han Fei quickly turned himself into a sea demon, he knew that Han Fei was up to no good. Han Fei bared his teeth. The Sea Clan rules such a vast ocean. How can I survive in their territory if I don't turn into a sea demon? The old turtle mumbled. Actually, you can exclude the ferocious beasts of the Sea Clan. If the territory you live in is large enough, you will find that the Sea Clan and the ferocious beasts in the sea are often on opposite sides. Han Fei's eyelids cramped. Oh, what do you mean? The old turtle said awkwardly. You see the Sea Clan riding all kinds of ferocious beasts because they are too weak. When you get out of this ocean, you will find that the ferocious beasts and rogue cultivators in this boundless ocean are equally terrifying. Han Fei didn't care. Then let's talk about it later. If I turn into a ferocious beast now, I will only be crushed by the Sea Clan. With a thought from Han Fei, he appeared under a layer of ice at the bottom of the sea with a swish. Because of the concealment of the array, ordinary creatures couldn't find Han Fei at all. However, at the moment when Han Fei suddenly appeared from Forge the Universe, immediately, a sense of perception swept over. Similarly, Han Fei also immediately scanned back, only to find that it was an advanced Tao-seeking state half-mermaid. At this moment, the four major regions were preparing for a war, so it was not surprising that a Tao-seeking state half-mermaid appeared. The half-mermaid asked, "Who are you? What are you doing here instead of going to the battlefield?" Han Fei immediately walked out of the concealment array, swam quickly towards the half-mermaid, and said in the sea demon language, "Master, I just discovered a secret. It seems that a human powerhouse crossed the void and the ice city wall. I'm afraid that person is up to no good, so I'm here waiting for a strong master like you to deal with this matter." Huh, really? Seeing that Han Fei spoke the sea demon language fluently and quickly, the half-mermaid didn't notice anything wrong. At this moment, he noticed Han Fei's face and couldn't help frowning. Huh, why don't I know you? Han Fei was already very close to the half-mermaid, and he grinned. "Master, how can you not know me? Damn you." Vertex, Chapter 1204. Han Fei's voice was still drifting in the water, but he was already gone. Oh, the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar stunned the advanced Tao-seeking state demon. At that moment, Han Fei's speed soared to the maximum. At such a close distance, the void lines had already been launched. However, at the moment when the void lines touched the demon, he felt a trace of resistance. It seemed to be a soul treasure or a soul secret technique. However, Han Fei was already an explorer at this moment. Therefore, although the other party had some soul defense methods, he still couldn't stop the void lines. Not only that, but he also activated the sky stealing technique. At that moment, pure vitality poured into his body. Han Fei said, "Old turtle, this is my gift to you. Eat slowly and let me see what kind of information is in his soul." In a flash, Han Fei inserted a hand into the half-mermaid's body. At the same time, he controlled the half-mermaid with the void lines and threw out all the weapons that it had recognized as its master. There were more than a dozen of them, including a high-quality divine weapon. Puff, puff, puff. The half-mermaid wanted to struggle, but his soul was stuck in a stalemate, and the weapons were removed one by one. Not only did the weapons become ownerless, but the commonly used weapons would also backfire on the owner, causing him to bleed from his 7 orifices and shake his internal organs. Han Fei punched, broke the half-mermaid's dantian, and injected spiritual energy into its body, directly destroying a small part of its body. Caught off guard, an advanced Tao-seeking state demon was completely destroyed by Han Fei in the blink of an eye. The old turtle didn't think much of Han Fei's sudden attack. He just felt that Han Fei was very suitable to fall into the devil's path. Oh no, he was simply a little devil. Just a second ago, he was reporting information to the other party with a smile, but the next second, he killed the other party. It was impossible to guard against him. Who could have expected that a creature who spoke the sea demon language and looked like a half-mermaid would suddenly attack him as a companion and a superior? The old turtle couldn't help but sigh. Han Fei's strength has soared so much, and he has such powerful means. It seems that the realm of ice is doomed. How easy it was for a strong master to obtain high-end resources when hunting. Han Fei had a deep understanding of this. He casually picked up a sun-moon shell. Let's not talk about what's in this sun-moon shell. Just the speed of finding resources was like heaven and earth compared to before. Of course, when Han Fei scanned it with his perception, he immediately cursed. What the hell? A large pile of divine weapon materials that hadn't been purified yet, and they still had the nerve to put them in the sun-moon shell? TCH, there are less than 200 spirit fruits? Only 300,000 caddies of spirit spring? Has he gone mad from poverty? Han Fei didn't feel good at all. After all, this was an advanced Tao-seeking state demon. I can understand that you want to forge a supreme-grade divine armament. However, in order to forge a divine weapon, he had used up all his money? Wouldn't it cost money to refine it? Han Fei was not in the mood to refine any weapons now. He had so many weapons on him that he couldn't use them all. He casually threw the more than 180 spiritual fruits into Forge the Universe, opened a small pit in Forge the Universe, and threw more than 300,000 caddies of spirit spring into it. With such a small amount of resources, Han Fei felt that it wasn't even enough for him to deduce a combat skill. Injecting the Beast King technique would cost 500 million. Han Fei's face was black. While this Tao-seeking state demon was still alive, he was reading its soul. He didn't know if it was because his soul had become stronger, but when he read other people's souls, the picture he saw was several times clearer than before, and the content was much richer. After a while, Han Fei frowned slightly. It turned out that in the depths of the realm of ice, although there was no royal city. However, there was a very special place called the Ice God Gorge. The Ice God Gorge was about 600,000 kilometers away from the Ice City Wall. Within a radius of 50,000 kilometers around the Ice God Gorge, there were two mountain ranges that looked like undersea snow mountains. There was a sea demon city on the periphery where many sea demons lived all year round, like a place similar to the 10,000 Demon Valley. However, Han Fei knew that there were venerables in the Ice God Gorge. He just didn't know if the venerables would defend the Ice God Gorge during the Waterwood battle. Of course, Han Fei's first goal was not the Ice God Gorge, but a hot sea about 200,000 kilometers away from the Ice City Wall. Perhaps it was due to the influence of the Sea of Flames, but within this area of 200,000 kilometers, there was a large area known as the Land of Fire that was recovering with warm currents. Many creatures liked to cultivate there. Yesterday, if Han Fei and Shu Xiaoman had kept going deep, they would have come to this fire spring. Han Fei directly shattered the internal organs of this Tao-seeking state demon, threw it into Forge the Universe, and said to the old turtle, "The vitality of an advanced Tao-seeking state demon is enough, right? Old turtle, after eating, we have to work." The old turtle whispered, "This little vitality is not enough." Han Fei sneered. "Don't pretend. Do you think I didn't see anything? A peak-level explorer is enough for you to have a full meal. Today, an advanced Tao-seeking state demon is definitely a full meal for you. Don't forget, we just made an agreement." With that, Han Fei stepped into the void and rushed to the place of the fire spring. The periphery of the fire spring, about 50,000 kilometers. It had only been 6 hours since the war broke out. Along the way, Han Fei easily killed 3 Tao-seeking state demons and 6 peak-level sea spirits. At this critical moment when the war broke out, Han Fei originally wanted to parachute into the enemy's territory. However, when Han Fei ran, he found that something was wrong. Now, all the creatures in the entire realm of ice seemed to have been summoned. A massive number of them were gathering towards the Ice City Wall. If Han Fei wanted to parachute into the enemy's base camp, the direction was always opposite to the direction of the sea demons. Even if he tore the void, he could always meet Tao-seeking state demons of the Sea Clan. Their realms were the same, so it was unrealistic to completely avoid their sight in the void. Therefore, Han Fei simply stood in the void and waited. Because he used the Heaven Void Divine Walking Technique, he had the ability to see through the enemy. Han Fei suddenly stretched out his hand from the void and directly pinched a shark at the peak-level sea spirit to death. For the current Han Fei, pinching a peak-level sea spirit to death was no different from stabbing an ant. At most, this ant was a little stronger. The old turtle said, If it were me, I would quickly locate the area where you are when I find that a large number of strong masters on my side have died. Han Fei frowned. It doesn't matter. I have a plan. I just need to put on a show. It's not a big deal. Han Fei suddenly stepped out of the void, and for a moment, a large number of creatures in the sea perceived him and came over. However, Han Fei was a Tao-seeking state powerhouse. Although the sea demons didn't know Han Fei, many sea demons and sea spirits said, "Greetings, Master." "Oh, all of you come here." The sea demons didn't know what was going on, and a few sea spirits were still wondering why they had never seen this master before. However, the army was marching towards the Ice City wall, and Han Fei could summon a lot of people with a casual call. "Master, what can I do for you?" Han Fei scanned with his perception, and then his eyes lit up. Han Fei said, I'll give you an opportunity." Opportunity? A sea spirit realm powerhouse was refreshed. Does this master have something important to arrange for some people to do? Han Fei casually threw a drop of water to the nearest sea spirit realm half-mermaid. "Do you know what this is?" The sea spirit realm half-mermaid was dumbfounded and then shook his head slightly. "Master, this is? Haha, this is your opportunity." With that, Han Fei opened his mouth. Bam! Rumble. Immediately afterward, there was a terrifying explosion, and the core range directly swept more than 50 kilometers. The infinity water, which had advanced together with Han Fei, exploded again, and its power blasted all the creatures within 10 kilometers into powder. Even Han Fei himself was blasted to roll in the sea. At that moment, there were probably no less than 10,000 creatures killed by Han Fei. There were 5 or 6 sea spirit realm cultivators and nearly 100 sea demon realm cultivators. Under this explosion, they were all turned into ashes. In his heart, the old turtle shouted, "Attention, it's coming." Bam! Han Fei put away the infinity water, and energy surged all over his body, shattering all his skin. His chest was covered with blood, and he stepped into the void and rushed to the place of the fire spring. In the end, Han Fei didn't forget to change his face. That face was the face of a junior Tao-seeking state big demon that he had just killed. This level was neither high nor low, so it shouldn't be taken seriously. Just about 10 minutes after Han Fei ran in the void, someone suddenly rushed over, blocked Han Fei's way, and shouted, "You bedoffing stop." Han Fei looked at the person in front of him in panic, his face extremely pale, and he said anxiously, "Master, don't go forward. I'm afraid the insect queen will attack us." While talking, Han Fei controlled the blood from the corner of his mouth. Of course, this blood was not Han Fei's own blood, but that he extracted from the half-mermaid that was killed in the forged sky. The old turtle reminded him, "You're at the peak of the Tao-seeking state. Don't neglect it." The insect queen? The peak-level Tao-seeking great demon was stunned. Why would the insect queen go to the sea in person? However, at the moment when the peak-level Tao-seeking great demon was stunned, suddenly he heard an earth-shattering roar, and a terrifying, soul-shaking power rushed straight into his head. Not good. At that moment, he knew he had been fooled. However, although Han Fei's void lines couldn't control his soul, he could extract his vitality. Snowmorn was fully activated. The experience of using a sea-quelling bizarre treasure in the Explorer realm was completely different. Han Fei felt that he was holding a divine weapon that could cut the sky and the sea. He pulled out the sword, and the sword mark penetrated the peak-level Tao-seeking great demon. However, the opponent was at the peak-level Tao-seeking after all, and his physique and blood were far better than that of an advanced Tao-seeking expert. Han Fei's sword was extremely fast, but most of it was still subconsciously resolved by the demon. Of course, half of the Tao-seeking great demon's body was blown up, his soul was pierced, and his vitality was taken away. He didn't feel any better. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei roared, "Old turtle, do it!" Chapter 1205. When Han Fei stunned the peak-level Tao-seeking demon, a large mass of black directly tied it up. The old turtle said, "I can only trap it for a few seconds now. Kill it quickly." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. A few seconds was enough for a battle between the strong. At this moment, the peak-level Tao-seeking demon was stunned. As soon as blood spurted out of its 7 orifices and its soul came back, it felt that its vitality was being deprived. Not only that, its internal organs were shattered by a sword, and it was in a life-and-death crisis. However, the next moment, it felt that something cold was actively drilling into its body from its throat. Looking inside, it was a drop of water. Before it found out what was different about this water, the infinity water exploded directly in its heart. Rumble, how could the Tao-seeking state demon, whose life was hanging by a thread, withstand such crazy attacks one after another? With this explosion, everything below its head was blown up. Come back. Han Fei put away the sea demon's head, broke one of his arms and one of his legs, and rushed all the way back. Those who didn't know might think that Han Fei was running with his blood burning. The old turtle said, "Boy, you're really ruthless. Aren't you afraid that the Venerables will attack you?" Han Fei's heart searched. As long as it dies fast enough, what can the Venerables do? The Venerables are not omnipotent. The old turtle sighed. You're just lucky. Maybe it's just that this time the battle is imminent, and the people who died were not the top masters, so the Venerables didn't pay attention to it. But from now on, you can't do this kind of thing anymore. Han Fei grinned. I'm fooling the Venerables, huh? Han Fei had 4 Venerables as his masters. Of course, he knew that Venerables were different from ordinary people in terms of perception and observation. However, one thing Han Fei could be sure of was that although the Venerables could see through the void, they couldn't observe the void cracks. These were 2 different concepts. For example, the Venerables could ignore space and see what was happening tens of thousands of miles away. However, what he could see was in the real world. Once something happened in the void cracks, even if it was thousands of miles away, the Venerables might not be able to detect it. Otherwise, how could he understand the battle between the Venerables? Han Fei killed the big demon at the peak-level Tao-seeking state very quickly. Even if a Venerable one was extremely fast and could travel 5,000 kilometers in a single step, he would still need to take 2 steps. Moreover, it was proven that ordinary Venerable ones were not that powerful. To be able to travel 10,000 miles in a single step, one had to be at least a half-step monarch. Ordinary Venerables were also unable to ignore spatial distance and appear wherever they wanted. This is not. 5 breaths later, a man wearing a turtle shell tore through the air and appeared where the peak Tao-seeking cultivator had fallen. Are there any survivors? The tortoise man turned his head to look in Han Fei's direction. A moment later, he saw Han Fei frantically running for his life. At this moment, Han Fei was a bit miserable. One of his arms was dangling, one of his legs was lame, and his body was covered with cracks. Blood flowed out from the wounds all over his body. Bang! Han Fei fell as if he had hit a wall. That terrifying force shook his internal organs, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood that he had already prepared. As the saying went, there was no such thing as dizziness in a life-and-death situation. Han Fei immediately bared his teeth and roared, and the divine weapon harpoon in his hand was surging with demonic energy. Freeze! Han Fei felt a chill all over his body, thinking that he had been frozen into an ice block. When Han Fei took a closer look, he saw a bald man with white eyebrows and a long beard, wearing a blue and white turtle shell, staring at him coldly. Tell me, what happened? Who killed you? Han Fei was shocked at first, then overjoyed, and finally said with a shiver, Master, it was too fast. I couldn't see it clearly at all. Maybe it was a Venerable from the Waterwood Heaven who seemed to be able to devour vitality. I could only see a black mist, and then just a shockwave, which had already seriously injured me. I couldn't resist it at all. Would a Venerable realm powerhouse know a half-mermaid who had just entered the Tao-seeking state? Han Fei thought to himself. The Venerable looked at Han Fei up and down. If I remember correctly, your name is Udafing, right? Even Yu has fallen, but you are still alive? That's really strange. Forget it. Go back and recover. Han Fei thought his acting skills were superb. Anyway, when he was halfway through his words, The old turtle suddenly narrowed his eyes, broke the void, and struck somewhere in the void. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, who did this old turtle find? In his heart, the old turtle said leisurely, "Boy, this is what you call a trick. It's called hiding under the lamp." Han Fei was speechless. "How did you do it?" The old turtle snorted. "Have you forgotten that I am an emperor? As long as a wisp of my aura descends into the void, how can I not attract its attention?" Han Fei continued to maintain his current seriously injured body and rushed all the way to the place of the fire spring. At the same time, he muttered in his heart, "I don't know what vitality is. I don't know how much I should give this old turtle to eat. However, this old turtle is really powerful. It lives in my body and can even send its aura to other places." He couldn't underestimate it. Han Fei, who was seriously injured, also encountered a lot of Dao-seeking state monsters on the way. However, at this moment, he couldn't take action. The old turtle reminded him, "It's fine if you kill a batch in the front, but if there's a problem in the rear, the venerable just now will definitely notice that there's something wrong with you." Han Fei curled his lips. "Don't worry, I have experience. Speed is the most important thing in war. I'll destroy their nest first and then escape immediately." In the place of the fire spring, Han Fei's perception swept around. At this moment, there were not many creatures in the fire spring. At least in his perception, there was not a single Dao-seeking state monster, but 7 or 8 sea spirit state monsters. Humph! Han Fei immediately took a deep breath. "What is an opportunity?" "This is an opportunity," Han Fei said. "Old turtle, I know your perception range is definitely not worse than mine. Let's find them together." The old turtle said, "I need vitality." Han Fei curled his lips. "We are already allies. Why do you care about this? Do I look like someone who needs your vitality? Let's sweep this area and get the vitality of a Dao-seeking state monster." Okay, in the old turtle's view, these resources that Han Fei pursued were actually of no use to him. Even if these things fell to the ground, he wouldn't bother to pick them up. Therefore, the old turtle was quite willing to exchange these so-called resources for vitality. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Half an hour later, Han Fei stood in an original sea spirit cave residence, which was shrouded by a killing array. However, in Han Fei's view, the level of this killing array was too low and could be broken at any time. Of course, Han Fei knew that the cave residences of half-mermaids generally didn't have too many good things. At this moment, Han Fei saw a few swallowing seashells in the shell bed in this cave residence, and only a pile of colorful refined stones piled up in the cave residence. Han Fei picked up a piece of refined iron and nodded slightly. Low-quality divine weapon materials. This half-mermaid is quite rich. Well, this shell bed seems to be quite exquisite. Let's take it. There seem to be a few spiritual stones under this cave residence. With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp appeared. He took out a string of swallowing seashells and hung them on the neck of the nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Han Fei kicked him out. "Go dig out all the spiritual stones underground for me. I'll give you half an hour, and then come to me." The nine-tailed mantis shrimp froze in place with a dumbfounded look. Why did he ask me to dig a hole again? However, Han Fei's figure had already left quietly, and in this cave residence, except for those glowing water plants, there was no table. He wondered how big the shadow in the hearts of those sea spirit realm half-mermaids would be when they came back and saw this scene. The old turtle couldn't stand it anymore and shouted in a low voice, "If you keep robbing like this, how long will it take you to rob?" Han Fei said again, "Don't worry. Let me tell you, collecting resources is a matter of accumulating little by little to make a mickle. Some things may seem useless to you, but they may be useful in the future." The old turtle said, "Do you think this so-called war will last for a long time? From the time you left the fearless barrier to here, the human should have broken through to the venerable realm long ago. Or he has already been seriously injured or killed. There shouldn't be much time left for you." Han Fei grinned. "No, I won't. It's rare for us to have a mighty fight. The forces of the four sides have just pressed in. You say the war is over? You don't understand the tricks of the sea demons. They won't let go of any opportunity to weaken humans or other clans. Han Fei was very sure that this attack was similar to the general attack of the Scattered Stars Island. If a large number of strong masters were not killed, this battle would not end at all. Sure enough, half a day later, Han Fei had swept more than 80 caves in a radius of 10,000 kilometers. In Forge the Universe, the resources were piled up like a hill, although most of them were useless to him. Just as Han Fei took back the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and was about to kill those caves with people, suddenly, in Han Fei's perception, a Tao-seeking state demon appeared. The Tao-seeking state demon scanned and found Han Fei. Immediately, the demon shouted, "You Dafeng, why are you still here?" Han Fei was stunned. Why is there a Tao-seeking state demon here? But he didn't panic and immediately thought of something. It's a long story. I was ambushed on the way and almost died. I'm here to find some resources to repair it. The Tao-seeking state demon quickly stepped over, looked at Han Fei, who was crippled and had a broken hand, and then scanned him with his perception. He suddenly said with a strange look, "Damn, did you take the opportunity to loot all the caves here? Good. You Dafeng, I didn't expect you to be like this." Han Fei thought, "Good, you're just at the early stage of the Tao-seeking state. Since you insist on giving me this express delivery, I have to accept it." However, the Tao-seeking state demon shouted, "No, but Dafeng, you'll get half of it." Huh? Han Fei was taken aback. This person, is he also here to rob me? Han Fei couldn't help narrowing his eyes and staring at the demon for a while. "Haha, brother, always take all of it when we meet. You're the first to ask for half of it." Chapter 1206. Just like human society, the society of the sirens was not completely united. Among the sea demons, there were many cunning sea demons. Yu Jing was such a person. Logically speaking, Tao-seeking realm demons like them had to participate in such a sudden battle. However, Yu Jing created a feeling that he was about to make a breakthrough, so he reluctantly stayed in the Ice God Gorge. When all the people left, Yu Jing said that he hadn't made a breakthrough and left 4 hours later than the others. Coincidentally, Yu Jing came to the place of the fire spring. Coincidentally, he met Yu Dafeng, who was plundering. At this moment, hearing Yu Dafeng's sarcastic words, Yu Jing immediately shouted, "Yu Dafeng, I saw everything. Do you think you can eat all the food alone?" Han Fei grinned. "I won't eat all the food alone. I'm going to eat you as well." In the blink of an eye, Han Fei's figure disappeared on the spot. Yu Jing was shocked. Yu Dafeng's strength was even weaker than his. Was he going to fight him? However, in the next second, he felt a terrifying gravity pressing down on him. Yu Dafeng appeared directly in front of him and slashed at him with a short knife. No, this is not Yu Dafeng. Just as Yu Jing was about to escape, something that shocked him happened. He found that his soul seemed to be controlled, and he couldn't move. In a flash, Yu Jing's soul immediately begged for mercy. "Brother, I surrender. Please spare my life." Puff! As the saying went, there was no turning back. Han Fei thought to himself, this Tao-seeking state demon seems to be a bit cowardly. Immediately, he changed from slashing to stabbing. Chilla! Han Fei pulled out the blood-drinking knife that had just been stabbed in. At that moment, Yu Jing's blood spurted out, and Han Fei punched Yu Jing in the abdomen. EW! Another mouthful of blood spurted out. Yu Jing was dumbfounded. Is this still Yu Dafeng? Is Yu Dafeng so strong? He can make me vomit blood with a casual punch? Han Fei curled his lips. If he had a spy, he would definitely be able to grasp first-hand information. For example, where were the caves of the strong? This way, he could save a lot of trouble. Han Fei bared his teeth and pretended to be hoarse and gloomy. "I can let go of your soul, but you have to cooperate with me. Otherwise, I'll break all the bones in your body and swallow your vitality." Gulp! Yu Jing shivered. There was only one thought in his mind. Yu Dafeng had been possessed. Moreover, the person who had taken over his body was very strong, and he was definitely not a match for him. When there was only one void line left, he said hoarsely, "Okay, you can speak now." Yu Jing shivered all over and quickly moved his feet. But for some reason, he felt that something was wrong. It was as if he was still in the clutches of the devil. Han Fei sneered. No need. I've done something to your soul. So long as you cooperate with me obediently, I'll naturally protect you from death. But if you have other thoughts in your heart, I can corrode your divine soul and destroy your body within 7 steps. Yu Jing shuddered and hurriedly said in fear, Yu Jing will follow Sir's lead. Sir's will is Yu Jing's will. As long as Sir gives the order, Yu Jing will take the lead. Ha ha ha. Han Fei sneered. You're a smart boy. Don't worry, I've been sleeping for 10,000 years. When I wake up, it's time for me to use people. As long as you're obedient, I won't treat you badly. In the future, I will grant you eternal life. The more the old turtle listened to Han Fei's bragging, the more he felt something was wrong. Wasn't this his own line? The old turtle felt his blood freeze. When he walked on the devil path, he experienced ups and downs in his turtle life. However, this kid was King born to be a demon. Han Fei asked leisurely, You should know what I'm looking for. Yu Jing was shocked. Although deep in his heart, he also guessed that Han Fei was bragging. He couldn't refute him now. Yu Jing hurriedly said, Are you looking for spiritual spring water and divine weapons? Yu Jing pondered. Since Han Fei possessed Yu Dafeng, it was probably because his own conditions were limited. What did Yu Dafeng have? He was a poor loser, the kind that lacked everything. This fully showed that Han Fei's pursuit should not be too high. Smack! Han Fei slapped Yu Jing away. Can mere spiritual spring water and divine weapons satisfy me? What I want is the entire Ice God Gorge. Yu Jing was dumbfounded. You have a big fist. Keep bragging. Damn it, if you can rob the entire Ice God Gorge, what else do you need me for? Han Fei said leisurely, You, go rob the 6 sea spirits nearby first. You're only allowed to rob, but you're not allowed to kill. At that time, Yu Jing's face turned green. Are you kidding me? You want to rob them, but you don't allow me to kill them? Won't I be exposed? Then how can I survive in the Ice God Gorge in the future? Han Fei casually set up a ceiling array and smirked. Take this as a token of your loyalty. Don't worry, within 3 days, I can rob the entire Ice God Gorge. At that time, the infinite ocean will be my way back. How could I waste my time on such a small place? Yu Jing's heart tightened. 3 days? Didn't that mean that 3 days later might also be the day of his death? Of course, Han Fei knew what Yu Jing was thinking and couldn't help sneering. Humph, you're just a Tao-seeking state cultivator. I don't care about you. I've just recovered and need a servant. It depends on your performance in the next few days. Gulp. Yes, master. Yu Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What could he do? He didn't believe Han Fei at all. He could only take advantage of these 3 days to create the conditions for himself to escape. However, how could he create the conditions? The first thing was to obey the order. Yu Jing trembled all over because he found that Han Fei's cold eyes seemed to be aiming at his head. Yu Jing hurriedly said, Master, this is just a fire spring. Do you need to do it yourself? Yu Jing will rob it for you. After a moment, in a cave, a lobster was surprised. You are Master Yu Jing. Hey, Master Yu Jing, what are you doing? When the lobster saw Yu Jing's large hands snatching all of his resources, he panicked and said, Lord Yu Jing, these are all things this lowly one prepared to offer to you. Please be magnanimous and spare this lowly one's life. Yu Jing looked complicated. He really wanted to kill this guy. However, he had to let this guy see it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to prove his loyalty. Yu Jing could only snort. I'm robbing you because I think highly of you. These resources are all for my urgent use. I will return them to you in the future. Then, not long after, an octopus shouted angrily, Yu Jing, I'm Long Zhang's Jr. How dare you rob me? Bam! The giant octopus was slapped into the mud pit with a single slap. Yu Jing didn't want to talk nonsense. I can't even save my own life. I don't care who you are. 1, 2. When Yu Jing robbed the 5th person, it was a blood sea cucumber, which was almost killed by Yu Jing. Yu Jing snorted coldly. Don't be so shameless. I'm robbing you because I think highly of you. However, the void trembled, and Han Fei appeared in front of him. Yu Jing's heart tightened. only to see Han Fei poke a hole in the bloody sea cucumber with one finger and kill it. Han Fei clicked his tongue and said, "This thing tastes good. You should keep it." "Oh, you just sent a message to it. What's wrong? Do you think I can't detect it?" Yu Jing's body immediately went limp, and he burst into tears. "Damn it, I shouldn't have played these tricks in front of you, Master. Master, please give me another chance. If I offend you again, Master, kill me." At that moment, the Tao-seeking great demon knelt down to Han Fei with a plop. Han Fei was stunned. How can this be? Doesn't this guy need to seek his Tao anymore? To be honest, this kneel had taken away at least half of this fellow's Tao. Han Fei was stunned for a while before he said faintly, "Humph, if you do this again, I'll kill you." Yu Jing almost burst into tears of gratitude and hurriedly said, "Thank you for sparing me, Master." Han Fei gently waved his hand. "Have you looted everything here? Is there any important place that hasn't been looted? If I find it myself, then—" "Humph." Yu Jing's heart skipped a beat, and he knew that he couldn't be muddle-headed anymore. Yu Jing said, "Master, the Land of Fire is actually only suitable for revision. However, because it's too close to the ice and snow city wall, only 200,000 kilometers away. Therefore, there are often strong human masters spying on it. Therefore, most strong masters won't really build their mansions here. Most of the sea spirit realm creatures cultivate here, and there are often 2 or 3 Tao-seeking state powerhouses guarding it. Now that the war has started, there is basically no place to loot in the Land of Fire. I'm afraid." "Han Fei, huh?" Yu Jing said cautiously. "If you really want to loot, I'm afraid you have to go to the Ice Mountain City or the Ice God Gorge." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Where's the Ice Mountain City? But since it's called a city, it should be of a higher level than the Ice God Gorge, right? It's better to loot a city first." Han Fei asked, "How many venerables are there in the Ice God Gorge now?" Han Fei's eyes were full of fierceness. Yu Jing's heart skipped a beat. Why didn't he ask about the Ice Mountain City? However, fearing that Han Fei would find something wrong again, he immediately said, "Compared with the Sea of Fire and the Dark War Port, the Ice God Gorge is not a strategic place. Therefore, the 3 venerables are always stationed here. I know that now the 3 venerables are not here, and only a few peak-level Tao-seeking powerhouses are guarding it. The forces of the Ice Mountain City should be even weaker now, and most of the strong masters have gone to battle." Han Fei secretly smiled. "That's good." But on the surface, he looked at Yu Jing with a faint smile. "Then you have to confirm it clearly. Even if the venerables are here, I can still easily kill you. If something unexpected happens, don't say that I didn't give you a chance." Chapter 12:07. Yu Jing knew that he couldn't recover this time. He robbed the fire spring openly and didn't kill the witnesses on the spot. In any case, he couldn't recover. Even without Han Fei, it was impossible for him to go back to the Ice God Gorge. In fact, as soon as this pledge was made, Yu Jing's way had already been cut off. Although the White Shell Royal City occupied a large area, he couldn't stay in the realm of ice any longer. Otherwise, he would be easily crushed to death. Even in the entire White Shell Royal City, Yu Jing wasn't sure if he could survive there. As for the Blood Sea Divine Wood, he might be accepted if he went there as a Tao-seeking state cultivator. But the women of the Blood Sea Divine Wood were usually good to those who surrendered to the White Shell Royal City. There was no reason why he could survive on the Blood Sea Divine Wood side. Yu Jing took a deep breath and said, "My lord, you should know that I have nowhere to go after this pledge of allegiance is made. In this case, as long as you don't kill me, based on my understanding of the White Shell Royal City over the years, the Ice God Gorge is definitely not the only place I can loot." "Oh." Han Fei raised his head, glanced at Yu Jing, and then said leisurely, "The Royal City today can't be compared to the prosperous times. 100,000 years ago, I was able to fight Grand Venerable Tianqing, the strongest master of the Sky Clan, for 3,000 rounds. Now this shabby place is in such a mess. How can a human being cause such a stir when he becomes a venerable? This is depravity." Yu Jing really wanted to roll his eyes. Wasn't it 10,000 years just now? How come it's 100,000 years now? Forget it. It's tens of thousands of years if you say so. In any case, I can't beat you. Whatever you say. Han Fei waved his hand and said, let's go. Since there are no resources in this fire spring, let's go to the Ice God Gorge. Han Fei had always believed that as long as he robbed fast enough, even if the other party found out, so what? With the speed of these law enforcers, by the time they went to the front line to inform the strong masters to return, he might have already robbed the Ice God Gorge. As for the people Yu Jing didn't kill, Han Fei still didn't plan to kill. In the Shuemu heaven, a sea spirit state expert was actually nothing. Different from the Yin-Yang heaven, a sea spirit state expert could dominate the sea. Not here. The core forces here were all explorers. After he came to the Waterwood heaven, Han Fei realized that if all the creatures in a domain worked together, the number of experts that could be accumulated would be much more than he had imagined. Rip. Han Fei tore open the void and glanced at Yu Jing. What's your fastest speed? Let's take a look. Yu Jing's heart skipped a beat. He didn't care about anything else and directly ran at full speed. As a rather unique beginner Dao-seeking peak, its speed was one of its greatest advantages. Of course, it would be best if he could get rid of Han Fei. However, as soon as the fish flew out, it saw Han Fei following it leisurely and frowning. Why are you so slow? Yu Jing. Perhaps because Han Fei was used to the heavenly oasis divine walking technique. Yu Jing's speed was ridiculously slow in his eyes. Even if Yu Jing's full speed was actually half of his peak speed as a law enforcer, Han Fei still felt it was too slow. Han Fei roared, grabbed the fish well, and rushed out with a swish. Almost in an instant, Yu Jing was shocked to find that Han Fei's speed was more than 5 times faster than his. At that time, he was completely stunned. Although Han Fei had always said that he had lived for tens of thousands of years, Yu Jing thought that Han Fei was bragging. Did he really live that long? Was he really that powerful? Did he have to possess Yu Dafeng? However, at this moment, he was surprised to find that Han Fei had soared to a speed close to the peak of the Dao-seeking level with the strength of a beginner. Gulp! Yu Jing was full of doubts. Is Han Fei really a prehistoric big demon? Damn you, Yu Dafeng. How did you meet such a prehistoric big demon? It doesn't matter that you were possessed, but you dragged me into it. The Ice God Gorge was the origin of the name of the realm of ice. The Ice God Gorge was formed by countless icebergs. Some floated on the sea, and some were connected to the undersea mountains like normal mountains. As for the core, it was where the name of the Ice God Gorge came from. It was 2 super icebergs or ice layers that extended from the bottom of the sea to the surface. The Ice God Gorge and the surrounding icebergs hadn't melted for tens of thousands of years, and the sea demons had already opened up countless caves. Here, even though countless creatures had rushed to the ice and snow city wall, a sea demon city had already been formed about 30,000 kilometers away from the Ice God Gorge, also known as Iceberg City. Only then did Han Fei know that Iceberg City was a village 1 level lower than the Ice God Gorge. Han Fei and Yu Jing concealed their identities and strength at this moment, hiding on a mermaid statue carved from ice cones. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth. Where's the most valuable place here? Yu Jing said respectfully, there's a small amount of spiritual spring and materials in each refining room. The rest belongs to the free trading valley. That's the property of a big demon at the peak of the Dao-seeking state. There's a big battle on the front line today, so there are not many people in the free trading valley today. I just don't know how many resources there are in the free trading valley. Han Fei immediately thought of something. Is this a place similar to the logistics division? At the dignified logistics division. How could Han Fei not be tempted? Although he knew that the core of the Ice God Gorge was not a gathering place for ordinary people. However, this didn't mean that these ordinary sea demons had fewer resources. As the saying went, the power of the masses was huge. Even if each person contributed a drop of spiritual spring, it would be an astronomical number. Han Fei's eyes lit up. Okay, let's rob this free trading valley. Yu Jing said with some embarrassment. Master, this place is very close to the Ice God Gorge after all. Under normal circumstances, it's okay for there to be no one guarding it. However, yesterday it seems that someone ambushed and killed sea spirit realm sea demons in the realm of ice. So, there must be a strong master guarding the free trading valley at this time. Han Fei didn't scan it with his perception. Now that he was an explorer, the strength of his soul was not as high as it used to be. Although it still seemed abnormal, if there was really a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon guarding it, the probability of him being detected was very high. However, he wouldn't be stupid if he didn't make use of his allies. Han Fei immediately asked in his heart, "Old Turtle, is there a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon inside?" The old tortoise said in a deep voice, "Can you stop calling me Old Tortoise? My title is Primitive Emperor." Han Fei said impatiently, Old Yuan, okay? Hurry up, I'm robbing you. Can't you be more careful?" The old turtle grunted, looking quite unhappy. There is one peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon, one advanced Tao-seeking realm demon, and no intermediate or beginner demon. They must have gone out to fight. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Old Yuan, how about one for each of us? The peak-level one belongs to you, and the advanced one belongs to me?" The old turtle said angrily, "I only have a wisp of soul now, and I was seriously injured by you. At this moment, I have no strength. Its vitality belongs to you." Han Fei naturally had a way to deal with the old turtle. As soon as he said this, the old turtle immediately changed his mind. "Okay." Han Fei curled his lips. "What can you do if I give you some vitality? Weren't you almost sucked dry by the calabash when you were in your peak state?" Han Fei glanced at Yu Jing and said, "I'm going to kill the peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon in the valley and the small fries who aren't even at the peak level. You could try to escape." Yu Jing was dumbfounded. "Are you dreaming? Even if you're really a prehistoric big demon, how can you kill a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon?" However, with a swish, Han Fei tore open the void. Yes, Han Fei didn't try to hide himself. Instead, he simply tore open the void and escaped. After all, the two sides could be said to be close, but they could also be said to be far. They were more than 2,000 li apart. For a peak-level, Tao-seeking realm powerhouse, 2,000 kilometers was definitely not a very long distance. At the moment when Han Fei tore open the void, the half-mermaid who was cultivating in the ice valley suddenly opened his eyes. When he looked at the void, he saw that the void 100 kilometers away from him was torn open, and a Tao-seeking realm creature appeared. You Dafeng, right?" Han Fei was helpless. "It seems that the role I played is quite famous. Why does everyone know me?" He just ignored the fact that no matter how weak the Tao-seeking realm was, it was still a Tao-seeking realm creature, not a muscle that could be seen everywhere. It was only natural that he was recognized. Han Fei didn't answer, but rushed to the free trading valley in a panic. This was a big iceberg. Maybe the sea monster was too lazy to build a house for himself, so he made a big hole in the iceberg and used it as a warehouse. Outside the warehouse, there was an array. Han Fei looked at the defense array and didn't care. Han Fei responded to the void, "Master, something big happened. Has Yu Jing come to the city?" Suddenly, the advanced Tao-seeking realm sea monster said, "Yu Jing? Didn't he just go out? I checked him when he passed by here. What happened?" Han Fei stopped outside the array and said with a gloomy face, "Master, Yu Jing just looted the fire spring. He betrayed us." What happened? The shark at the advanced Tao-seeking state swam out of the void, a little shocked. Han Fei grinned. "Because I asked him to loot it, Not good." Retreat. In the valley, there was a roar, and Han Fei saw a spear piercing at him through the void. However, Han Fei, who was already prepared, certainly wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. He twisted his body and appeared next to the shark. The law of gravity descended, the void lines burst out, and Snowmorn pierced the shark that had just opened its mouth to counterattack. Pucci. Unfortunately, Han Fei's series of actions were too fast. The shark was killed in the next second while waiting for the answer. Who could he complain to about this grievance? Someone in the valley roared, "Who are you?" Chapter 12:08. The peak-level Tao-seeking sea demon was shocked. How strong was Yu Dafeng? How could he kill Qin Sha, who was an advanced Dao-seeking state expert, in one blow. Just when the peak-level Dao-seeking sea demon was hesitating, Han Fei's body twisted slightly, and he appeared in the array. "How dare you?" The half-mermaid's expression changed drastically. How did this guy come in? The law of space, a law of space that could break through the restrictions of the array? How could Han Fei, a beginner Dao-seeking state expert, face a peak-level Dao-seeking state expert alone? Therefore, the moment Han Fei came in, the half-mermaid's heart sank, and he thought to himself, "Did I fall into someone's trap?" Sure enough, just when he wanted to retreat, a thick black fog suddenly emerged from the surrounding space. The half-mermaid roared, unfolded its fishtail, and whipped at the void. However, he had no idea who he was facing. At first, even a venerable didn't dare to enter the black fog when they saw it, let alone a peak-level Dao-seeking sea demon. Ha ha ha! What a strong vitality. Han Fei looked on coldly, full of disdain. It seemed that when he possessed him last time, this old turtle said the same thing. Now, he was still talking about this? Not creative at all. From the looks of it, becoming a demon and whatnot was just a bluff. However, looking at the thick black fog, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. Wasn't this old guy locked in the depths of his sea of consciousness by the demon purification pot? What? You can come out now? Suddenly, Han Fei heard a voice in his heart. Don't be surprised. My divine soul is still in your body. This black fog is just an ominous aura that I control to absorb vitality. The ominous aura that I summon across the air can trap him for at most 3 seconds and absorb no more than 1,000 years of his lifespan. So, you may need to take action. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Is this possible? Han Fei sighed. This old turtle is a bit fierce. Summoning an aura across the air can swallow 1,000 years of lifespan of a peak-level Dao-seeking state expert. Fortunately, he had the demon purification pot to suppress it. Otherwise, he might not even know how he died. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The black fog exploded with a loud bang. Following that, a shadowy figure rushed out from the black fog. However, as soon as the half-mermaid tore apart the black fog, it saw Yu Dafeng looking at it with a smile. Roar! Inside the valley, there were hundreds of beasts running amok. Under the impact of his soul, Han Fei held the embroidery needle and smashed the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, a half-mermaid at the peak-level Dao-seeking state was blown up. 80% of his bones were shattered, and his dantian was pierced and nailed to the ground. Han Fei said to the old turtle, "If we kill him immediately, it will definitely attract the attention of the venerable, right? Once you've swallowed enough of his life force, spare his life." The old tortoise casually grunted in acknowledgement. In the void, a black claw was piercing the half-mermaid. The latter was terrified. He couldn't even self-destruct. When had he ever thought about it? One day, would he be nailed to the ground in his own territory? And Han Fei had already reached out and picked up the half-mermaid's sun-moon shell. At this moment, he was looking at the randomly classified resources around him, feeling that he was about to drool. Sea monsters shouldn't be so careful about the division of resources. There were only more than 100 kinds of things piled separately here. In addition to a huge spiritual spring pool and a pool of spirit awakening fluid, there were dozens of unrefined stones, spiritual energy fruits, and energy fruits. The rest was relatively random. Anyway, there were a lot of them. He didn't know if people who had transcended the tribulation were particularly good at arithmetic. Han Fei just scanned with his perception and got the rough data at a glance. There are only less than 5 million caddies of spiritual spring, 300,000 caddies of spirit awakening fluid, about 60,000 spiritual energy fruits, about 30,000 energy fruits, and 20,000 other spiritual fruits. In addition, there are no ultra-quality divine weapons, only 1 high-quality divine weapon, 12 mid-quality, 39 low-quality. As for the pile of messy minerals, Han Fei directly ignored them. Han Fei rubbed his head. What should I do? Now I don't seem to have any concept of money. Although this batch of materials in front of him was several times worse than the materials he had accumulated. However, it wasn't easy for him to accumulate those materials. And these were what he got on the second day. He came to the Waterwood Heaven. Wow, don't panic. It shouldn't be a problem to exchange these things for 3 drops of the spring of life. Ha! The old turtle sneered in his heart and roared. Do you really think you can exchange for the spring of life as you want? Do you want to exchange for 3 drops with these things? Han Fei looked dumbfounded. Didn't I exchange for 10 drops before? The old turtle said leisurely, that's just because they took care of you because you are about to transcend the tribulation. When you reach a certain level, you'll find that these things are at most a little useful to creatures in the explorer realm. Even once you become a peak-level explorer, these things are almost no different from garbage. If you really want to exchange for them in terms of value, these things can only be exchanged for 1 drop of the spring of life, not to mention those you robbed before. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. What do you know? Not everyone was an expert. I can't use them, but you don't allow me to take care of humans? Han Fei quickly put all these resources into his pocket. The spring of life. 1 drop was also love. Then if I rob another 10 such warehouses, won't I be able to exchange for 10 drops? A strange look flickered in Han Fei's eyes. For others, this pile of things might not be of much use. But for him, it was not necessarily so. He had the demon purification pot. In the past, he hadn't discovered it and felt that deducing cultivation methods and combat skills with spiritual energy consumed too much spiritual energy. But now, Han Fei felt that spiritual energy was probably the easiest thing to get in this world. Although the consumption of deduction had begun to be measured in units of hundreds of millions. However, there were many ways to get spiritual energy. First, set a small goal and get 10 billion points of spiritual energy. The total amount was enough for him to deduce most of the cultivation methods and combat skills he had. After collecting the resources in this free trading valley, Han Fei perceived that a peak-level law enforcer had come to the outside of the array. The man respectfully held a sun-moon shell and said, "Lord Tooth, Lord Green Shark, these are the resources collected this month." Han Fei was overjoyed. "I'm leaving, but someone is still sending me resources?" And the Lord Tooth, who was nailed to the ground by Han Fei, widened his eyes, feeling very aggrieved, and seemed to want to struggle. Smack! Han Fei knocked it out with a slap and disappeared with a twist of his body. The next moment, when Han Fei reappeared, there was a dead half-mermaid in his hand. Han Fei threw this person to the ground and stored the sun-moon shell into Forge the Universe. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems that people often come to this place. Since I'm here, shouldn't I do something?" The old turtle said carelessly, "Time is running out. When the battle is over, you won't have a chance." The old turtle was speechless. Yesterday, he had tricked this kid into robbing the Ice God Gorge. Now, it had only been a day, and this brat really came. Moreover, the robbery was very thorough. Looking at Han Fei, who was drawing a raise, the old turtle felt that if this kid became a king, he would probably go to the extreme of the demonic path. At this moment, Yu Jing was hesitating whether to leave or not. If he left, what if Han Fei won and caught up with him? Besides, Han Fei said that he had done something to his soul. Was it a big problem? If he didn't leave, what if Han Fei couldn't win? While he was hesitating, a voice transmission suddenly sounded in his mind. "Haha, you haven't left yet. You have passed this test. Okay, there's only a peak-level Tao-seeking demon and a shark in the valley, which have been killed by me. Remember to seize the opportunity to rob those refining shops when there's a commotion in the valley later." Yu Jing shuddered and subconsciously said, "Yes, sir." Yu Jing was a little dumbfounded. How long has it been? Only half an hour. The peak-level Tao-seeking demon guarding this place died? Who was guarding it? He didn't know. However, the shark that Han Fei mentioned should be Lord Green Shark. Thinking of this, Yu Jing felt his mouth go dry. Qing Sha, a dignified high-level Tao-seeking realm cultivator, had actually died silently just like that. He didn't even feel the fluctuation of the void. However, Yu Jing finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't run away. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Boom! All of a sudden, a terrifying wave of spiritual chi spread out from thousands of miles away. Yu Jing immediately tore open the void and walked over. However, as soon as Yu Jing came out, a long and deep voice roared, "Today, I will become a venerable." Everyone in the city quickly go to the outside of the free trading valley and feel the baptism of Taoism. Wow, become a venerable? Is Lord Yi going to become a venerable? Great news! Lord Yi is going to become a venerable. Someone exclaimed, "Hurry, this is a great opportunity. The Taoism is mysterious and ordinary people can't see it." Someone shouted, "Baptism of Taoism." I didn't expect Lord Yi to be so generous. The scene of becoming a venerable can be seen by tens of thousands of people. There were also a few people who were puzzled. Is this the case? Why does it seem different from the rumors? Someone was surprised. Can Taoism be baptized? Yu Jing was stunned for a moment, and a voice suddenly shouted in his mind, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and give it to me. Take all the resources you can get." Yu Jing shivered again and was shocked. He was thinking, this person can create a false Taoism. It can be seen that this person is definitely a prehistoric demon. Besides, Lord Yi was a veteran peak-level Tao-seeking cultivator. How could he die so quietly? Half an hour later, when Han Fei attracted the attention of thousands of creatures, Yu Jing stole a lot of resources. Outside the iceberg warehouse in the free trading valley, a strange melody sounded, and the colorful light was eye-catching. Someone was shocked. What kind of Taoism is this? It seems to be able to connect to the sky. Someone sighed, "Hurry up and sit cross-legged. This is a once-in-a-century wonder. You must have a good understanding of it." Someone grinned. It's funny that Shui Mutian became a venerable alone and caused a war. You must think he is great. Who knows that there will be another venerable in the Ice God Gorge? While these people were talking, Han Fei had taken back 9 sounds, Fire Seed, and the others, and suddenly appeared next to Yu Jing. Yu Jing was stealing from a weapon shop. Seeing Han Fei suddenly appear, he was a little stunned. "Master, aren't you going to become a venerable?" Bullsh asterisk T. Let's go. BM, rumble. As soon as Yu Jing said that, a terrifying explosion resounded for 1,000 kilometers, and the sea was shaking and surging. Chapter 1209. There had never been such a terrifying explosion in the Ice God Gorge. It couldn't even be described as a mushroom cloud. That was because the entire area of the trading valley had exploded. The surrounding area was blown up, and at least 10 nearby ice mountains were blown up into pieces in an instant. When Han Fei and Yu Jing drilled out of the void thousands of miles away, they could still feel the terrifying impact coming at them, and a large area of the ice layer under them cracked and collapsed. Above the sky, large chunks of hailstones poured down like small bombs. Yu Jing looked at the indifferent Han Fei in shock and was speechless. What the hell did he do? How did he cause such a terrifying explosion? Han Fei nodded in satisfaction. Although he felt a little pained, he didn't suffer a loss. At the last moment, just now, Han Fei planned to escape directly. Anyway, he had already made a lot of money. However, on second thought, what the old turtle said didn't seem to be wrong. He didn't seem to have a great need for these spiritual springs now. After robbing the land of fire springs and the free trading valley, he had accumulated as many as 7 million caddies of spiritual spring. This didn't include some that Yu Jing had grabbed during the opportunity. In short, at the last moment, Han Fei spared no effort to trap 5 million caddies of spiritual spring in the array and forcefully detonated it. What did 5 million caddies of spiritual spring mean? That was 5 billion points of spiritual energy. No one would do this even if they didn't take the spiritual spring as money. There were 2 reasons why Han Fei chose to do this. First of all, this tribulation battle was caused by him. Then, there was the matter of Yu Chen entering the Tao. Now, the situation on the battlefield in the water with Sky was tense. Logically speaking, he should help out by making a move and attracting some of the attention. Otherwise, if he borrowed someone else's place to transcend the tribulation, he would cause big trouble for them. Then, he He turned around and ran away? That would be too heartless. However, it was really difficult to attract the attention of a strong master. A venerable wouldn't care much about the death of a few Tao-seeking state demons. It could be said that a third of the sea demons' gathering place that occupied a radius of nearly 10,000 kilometers had been destroyed, not to mention the number of sea demons. Besides, Han Fei was used to fishing in troubled waters. Only when there was a commotion here would he have a chance to rob other places. After all, the most important part of the Ice God Gorge was the gorge itself. At this moment, the gathering place of the Ice God Gorge's sea demons was in a mess. The epicenter of the explosion, which covered an area of about 3,000 miles, was directly crushed into pieces. Within 500 miles of the core, even sea spirit realm beings would find it difficult to escape. He was directly blasted into smithereens by the terrifying power of the explosion. Not even his remains were left. As for the 500-kilometer range to the 1,000-kilometer range, the total destructive power was as high as 60%. In other words, in this explosion, Han Fei killed an astronomical number of sea demons. At this moment, in the void above the ice wall, 5 venerable ones were fighting. At the moment when the Ice God Gorge exploded, a sea demon venerable shouted angrily, "Be *starred. I didn't expect the Shamu heaven to be so despicable." A clam girl shouted, "The realm of ice hasn't fought in 100 years. This time, you dare to go deep into the Ice God Gorge? I'd like to see which one dares to attack the territory of our sea clan." On the Shamu heaven's side, a big frost bird at this moment looked dumbfounded and said to a human venerable next to it, "Did we have such a plan? Why didn't I know?" The human venerable replied in confusion, "I don't think so." Everyone was standing on the battlefield, and the war was in a critical state. Where would they find the time to arrange for people to sneak attack the Ice God Gorge? However, this timing could be said to be perfect. As soon as the venerable of the Ice God Gorge arrived, something happened there. It seems that our people have already planned it, and even hid it from us. Among the 3 venerables of the Sea Clan, the old tortoise man fell into a trace of confusion. Wait, I searched it myself. I chased them all the way to the ice wall. Why did something happen in the rear? The human venerable said to him telepathically, "Send a venerable. The realm of ice won't stop fighting today." While the martial supremacies were competing, 2 illusionary figures stood high up in the sky. One was a beautiful woman, and the other was a cold young man. If Han Fei were here, he would definitely recognize her. Isn't she the Life Queen? Since he could confront the Life Queen face to face, the identity of the young man was not hard to imagine. When the terrifying explosion shook the world in the realm of ice, both of them looked in the direction of the realm of ice. The cold man focused his eyes, as if he wanted to see through the spatial mist, and directly set his vision on the place where the explosion happened. However, something unexpected happened. The heavenly secrets that were chaotic, and he couldn't see anything. Not only the cold man, but the Life Queen also couldn't see through it. The Life Queen frowned slightly. A place that even a king couldn't see through could only mean that someone in that place had disturbed the sky with the heavenly secrets. That was why she couldn't see through it. The cold man snorted and glanced around. When he saw Jing in the Dark War port, he frowned. "I'm curious, which venerable of the Waterwood Heaven is doing this?" The Life Queen smiled, but didn't say anything. How could she not know what kind of venerables there were in the Waterwood Heaven? "The only one that can avoid my own detection is the Bug King. There is no second one." However, the Worm King was fighting in the Dark War port at this moment. In other words, it wasn't a venerable who was making trouble in the Ice God Gorge. But could ordinary explorers go to the Ice God Gorge? Even if they went to the Ice God Gorge, a peak-level explorer wouldn't be able to make such a big noise. The Life Queen's heart skipped a beat, as she had a guess. She glanced around again. This time, she didn't look at the people on the Ice God Gorge's side, but at the wisp of green over there. Jing Er's venerable token. It's really him. There was no need to speculate about this kind of thing. This was only the second day Han Fei came to the Waterwood Heaven, and big events happened one after another. Plundering the realm of ice, sweeping the sea of flames, transcending the 4-9 Kings tribulation. At this moment, Han Fei had already disappeared. Judging from a level of trouble he caused, the things on the Ice God Gorge couldn't have been done by a second person. The Life Queen looked at the cold man and smiled faintly. White Armor Emperor, it's not the first time that your white shell royal city has bullied my Waterwood heaven. What? I just arranged a little trick and you can't stand it? The cold man snorted lightly. He's just a venerable. I like to see how much trouble he can make. Mu Wu Hua, if you want to stop this war, you must open the Thousand Mountains ancient realm. And the Life Queen smiled, but didn't say anything. If you knew that this was just a junior explorer, what would you think? The Life Queen wasn't worried at all. Since Han Fei was the chosen one, the only one who could come to the Waterwood heaven, and he was so good at making trouble, he couldn't have done all this without some means and great luck. Suddenly, the Life Queen could barely see that space through the aura of Jing, Er's venerable token. But why did she see two half-mermaids? Suddenly, the Life Queen's heart did a flip. Was Han Fei related to the Sea Clan? But on second thought, no, she knew Han Fei's identity. Since he wasn't related to the Sea Clan, did Han Fei have a way to transform into a sea demon? Interesting, Han Fei didn't know that he had been seen through. Taking advantage of the big explosion, he and Yu Jing crossed the void. While flying, Han Fei said via voice transmission, "If you meet any strong masters on the way, tell them I'm here to report the battle situation." Yu Jing said, "My lord, as far as I know, there are more than 5 peak stage Tao-seeking masters in the Ice God Gorge at this moment. Can we really steal them?" Han Fei sneered. Didn't they just explode? Could it be that the experts from the Ice God Gorge will remain indifferent? Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something and stopped. The void lines directly buckled the Yu Jing. "Let me use your body first." As he spoke, a series of arrays appeared under Han Fei's feet. The breath-concealing array and the stealth array were activated together. Only Yu Jing was still trying to sprint forward. Hum! In the void, 3 silhouettes flew over one after another. In his heart, the old turtle said, 1 peak stage, Tao-seeking, 2 advanced. Han Fei made up his mind. So be fast. After robbing the Ice God Gorge, we have to run. Old turtle, keep attacking. Stop, Yu Jing, didn't you go to the ice wall? Why are you here? Ice Mountain City, what happened just now? The 3 Tao-seeking realm demons were already standing in front of Yu Jing. At this moment, one of the advanced Tao-seeking realm demons pressed Yu Jing with one hand. If Yu Jing made any strange movements, he would immediately attack and tear him to pieces. However, Yu Jing was desperate at this moment, because except for his soul and consciousness, he couldn't control his body at all. Huh! What answered the 3 was a terrifying beast roar. Second, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 12:10. Han Fei was extremely glad that he had been to the 100,000 Mountains and inherited a variety of combat methods, which also made him more careful about the combat methods of various clans. He could sneak attack others when they were unprepared, but those creatures he didn't know would naturally have different means of attack. Similarly, he could also take them by surprise. Just like at this moment, Han Fei seemed to be controlling Yu Jing's body, but in fact he was just using Yu Jing as a carrier of his void lines. Yu Jing was taken down in the blink of an eye. With a roar, Han Fei and the old turtle took action one after another. The void lines were launched, and black mist shrouded them. A shocking sword light slashed across the sky, and 2 advanced Tao-seeking state creatures were directly cut down. In terms of absolute strength, the advanced explorer was no match for Han Fei at all. The sea demon at the peak level Tao-seeking state withered. However, at the moment when he was shrouded in black mist, an ultra-quality divine weapon exploded. In an instant, Han Fei was blasted hundreds of kilometers away. He felt his internal organs tumbling, and there were many wounds on his body, with golden blood dripping down. The great sea demon at the peak level Tao-seeking state was even more miserable. The explosion was closest to him, and he was blown up into a mutilated person on the spot. Han Fei saw that the great sea demon at the peak level Tao-seeking state had turned into a big octopus. However, at this moment, for tentacles were blown up, and only 5 were left. At this moment, the latter had just torn the space and ran to the outside world. And Han Fei's heart did a flip. "Hey, where's Yu Jing? Where's Yu Jing?" The old turtle was speechless. That little jellyfish was weak in the first place. When the ultra-quality divine weapon exploded, he was just at the peak-level Tao-seeking state. Of course, he was crushed to pieces. Han Fei said in surprise. "Really? He's at the Tao-seeking state after all." Han Fei was speechless. "I just found a F***king spy to confuse the Tao-seeking state big sea demon who came to chase me." Unexpectedly, the spy was killed. Han Fei roared, "Asshole, I'm going to kill that octopus." Han Fei didn't tear the space, but directly chased in the void. He could see the outside world in this void, only to find that the big sea demon was holding a big conch and howling. Han Fei's face changed greatly. "Not good. Kill him now." Han Fei didn't even have time to cast the divine healing technique on himself before he chased after them. At this moment, he couldn't care less about hiding anymore. He launched Snowmorn in midair. At the moment when the space was torn apart, the saber currents that filled the sky converged. The giant octopus's reaction wasn't slow either. On the octopus's head, a large eye opened up. Slurp! Terrifying laser-like rays shot directly at Han Fei. Han Fei frowned. His skin was scalded? What kind of attack was this? Even his current physique was easily scalded? The octopus was stunned too. What kind of physique was that? My purple lightning divine light couldn't even pierce through a person? Poochie! Han Fei glared and roared. Huh! He activated 100 Beast Soul, suppressing Roar and Snowmorn. With one blow, Han Fei pierced through this peak-level, Tao-seeking big demon. This was a terrifying battle record. Buzz! At that moment, the black fog enshrouded the Tao-seeking big demon again. Han Fei lowered his head and looked at his chest. It was slightly to the right of the center, which was almost pierced through by the purple light. What a terrifying power! The old turtle's voice echoed in his heart. Not good. Let's go. Han Fei suddenly shivered after tearing open the void for less than 2 seconds. Then, he heard the old turtle's reminder. He didn't dare to hesitate at all. With a swish, he tore open a spatial rift again and crawled in. Hum! 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 The arrays under Han Fei's feet were all concealment arrays and dense fog arrays. Humph! A giant hand clenched its fist, shattering over 10 formations into pieces. A silver-blue seahorse appeared in the void and transformed into a human in the blink of an eye. The seahorse crushed the spell formation, only to find that among the pile of spell formations, there was a short-distance teleportation portal that was currently in the process of being destroyed. The seahorse scanned the surroundings with a thought, but he frowned even more. Why is there no one? He directly scanned the surrounding 50,000 kilometers, but the seahorse didn't find anyone. Then he said to a big conch, I found the target, but he ran away. Not a venerable, but a peak-level explorer. This person's concealment method is quite exquisite and can avoid my perception. I'll personally guard the Ice God Gorge and wait for him to appear next time. Han Fei didn't know who the seahorse was talking to, but he couldn't hear it at this moment. He had already entered Forge the Universe. Half an hour later, in the undulating sea, a small jellyfish suddenly stretched its body and quietly swam to the outer sea of the realm of ice. Yu Jing panicked. Han Fei, including the Venerable, didn't know that Yu Jing's original body was a very special kind of jellyfish called the doomed jellyfish. The reason why Yu Jing refused to go to the front line was that, like his name, he basically couldn't come back. He could really trigger bad luck. He was still 200,000 kilometers away from the ice and snow city wall when he met Han Fei. Finally, he formed an alliance with Han Fei. This ruffian was very good at making trouble and was targeted by the Venerable again. Okay, now, no one knew whether Han Fei had been killed or not, but it didn't care about this matter anymore. It would be best if he was killed. He had robbed a batch of resources and didn't give them to Han Fei. Yu Jing fled unhurriedly. As a characteristic of the doomed jellyfish, his recovery ability was beyond imagination. Although misfortune was misfortune, He wouldn't die if it wasn't one of the 10 extreme death zones. As long as he didn't die, he could cultivate again in less than 10 years. Besides, he still had resources on him, which could greatly shorten the time of recultivation. I'm not going to the front line anymore. I'm going to the Hunwang city. Han Fei's strategic route of rapid attack and plunder ended in failure. At this moment, Han Fei cursed, "You Jing, that be **starred, didn't you say that there was no venerable in the Ice God Gorge?" Sure enough, those who are not my kind must have different intentions. I'm still too naive. I need to learn from this. The old turtle listened to Han Fei talking to himself and simply stopped talking. You're naive? You're not naive at all. Isn't that you Jingai good? If they were used as cannon fodder by you, they would be blown into smithereens. Han Fei regretfully took out a few Sun Moon shells, which he had taken from the peak-level Tao-seeking great demon just now. Plus, he had taken one before. F***CK. The old turtle asked, "What's wrong?" Han Fei's pupils dilated. "I forgot. I still have a batch of resources with you, Jing. Son of a B***TCH, I screwed up." The old turtle roared angrily. "Come on, tell me. What did I do to you? Do you know how many people in the tens of thousands of races want to be my son?" Han Fei was speechless. "Why are you angry?" The old turtle snorted heavily. "Actually, you're not bad. If you can recognize me as your adoptive father." Before the old turtle finished speaking, Han Fei sneered. "Just for this sentence, you owe me a peak-level Tao-seeking great demon. Remember, you owe me. Who are you? Do you want to take advantage of me? How can I, this young master, allow others to tarnish my majesty?" The old turtle, the two chatted for a while. Han Fei looked at his more than 2 million caddies of spiritual spring and thought to himself, "I can't go outside for the time being. I have to take care of this Ice God Gorge. But what if I take care of it? After the war with the Shimu Heaven is over, I have no chance to sneak into the Ice God Gorge. Besides, I've fallen into a desperate situation." Han Fei murmured, "If I were their venerable, I would definitely keep an eye on this space." The old turtle said, "Who told you to draw a short-distance teleportation array? If it were a long-distance teleportation array, no one would keep an eye on this place." Han Fei said with a black face, "In such a short time, I have to have time to carve the array. Humph. No, the sea is dangerous. I have to draw hundreds of fish skin maps in advance first." The old turtle, a day later, there was already a large pile of fish skin maps in front of Han Fei. He wondered if he should go out for a while first. Suddenly, the old turtle said, "Do you think the venerable is so impatient?" Han Fei gritted his teeth. If the venerable watched him for 8 or 10 years, how could he escape? At this moment, Han Fei really wanted to hide his true realm and return to the sea spirit realm. Wait. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. How long had it been since he paid attention to the progress of his cultivation? Han Fei suddenly straightened his body. By the way, he had learned too many combat techniques. Today, many of them had been eliminated by his subconscious. But he had the demon purification pot. Why should I be eliminated? At that moment, Han Fei's heart was rekindled. He found that he seemed to have a lot of room for growth. Third, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 12:11. From the Blue Sea Town to the Scattered Stars Island, Han Fei felt that he had been rapidly absorbing all kinds of skills. For example, refining techniques, arrays, and all kinds of combat skills. Then, he traveled to the outer sea and the ancient battlefield. When he arrived at the Thousand Star City, it was even more dangerous. After the trip to the Ideal Palace, Han Fei had lived an extra life for no reason. He had also learned a lot of combat skills and had been growing. During the 4 years in the Wind and Rain Village, he finally had the time to polish himself. But at that time, Han Fei was thinking about how to integrate his old self and his original self more thoroughly and dig out his strength, so he didn't pay attention to combat skills. At this moment, when Han Fei went to the outer sea alone again, he suddenly had the same feeling as when he was in the level 3 fishery. At that time, Han Fei thought everything he saw was good. Perhaps the Shuemu Heaven was really novel enough to arouse Han Fei's interest. At this time, Han Fei sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and scanned through the combat skills in his mind. The War Soul archery technique seemed to be abandoned for the time being. The War Soul archery technique in the Shuemu Heaven was obviously more advanced than the War Soul archery technique. If he wanted to learn it, he would learn the War Soul archery technique of the Flying Feather Clan first. The Million Knife art or the Million Knives in One was no longer enough for him. The next step of the Million Knives in One was deduced called the Million Thought Knife Light. If he guessed correctly, it should be a heaven-level, divine quality one. But he didn't lack offensive combat skills now, so he could save some resources for the time being. When Han Fei saw the 1,000 Faces technique, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. This was the technique that gave him an epiphany just now. If he continued to deduce the 1,000 Faces technique, would he hide his strength? There was also the Great Soul Sending technique. Han Fei hadn't used this evil technique even once. However, at that time, he thought it was an evil technique with too many disadvantages. But now, as long as he could deduce it, the evil technique might be able to become a divine technique. Who said that good and evil were completely separated? Han Fei continued to scan. The art of invincibility and the sacrificing punch were both combat skills that could not be deduced. Moreover, they were already very strong, so there was no need for further deductions. Although he could derive the 108 Desolate God Body and the 64-dimensional Fish Dragon Dance, he had just achieved a breakthrough in the Indestructible Body, and the effect of the heavenly, illusionary divine walking art would only be better than the Fish Dragon Dance, so he could give it up for now. Han Fei quickly recalled. Divine healing technique, I forgot about that. Nowadays, there are terrifying explosions at every turn, so it's necessary to continue to deduce it. What if he gets injured? The soul-splitting technique is similar to the Great Soul Embedding technique, but it's much more advanced. Heaven Extended technique, that's a transformation technique. I could try this technique a step further. Demon God Cannon. This cultivation technique of the sea race is peerless and close to the Tao. I could try to cultivate while I'm a sea demon. Han Fei continued to read, only to find that the 100 Wars Divine Hammer consumed too much spiritual energy. Any one of them required 500 million points of spiritual energy to deduce. Deducing the Beast King technique, Heavenly Ethereal Divine Walking technique, and Shifting Stars required 1 billion. This terrifying number made Han Fei feel sorry for the 5 million spiritual springs he had used before. Of course, he didn't panic at all. In any case, he would still be able to snatch it. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Han Fei decided on the few techniques that he would continue to deduce, which were the 1,000 Faces technique, which should be able to help him hide better when he deduced it here. Maybe you should deduce either the Great Soul Embedding technique or the Soul Splitting technique. He had to deduce the Heaven Extended technique first. This was related to whether he could transform into more creatures. In short, he could basically transform into anything that ran on the land or flew in the sky through the Beast King technique. As for swimming in the water, he was still a bit lacking. The Divine Healing technique, a miraculous technique of self-recovery, could bring him to a higher level as a spirit gatherer. After choosing these 4 techniques, Han Fei immediately took a breath, looked at the 1,000 Faces technique, and shouted in a low voice, deduce. 1 million points of spiritual energy were consumed. 1,000 transformation technique, heaven level, low quality, too weak. Deduce again. 10 million points of spiritual energy were consumed. Heaven transference technique, heaven level, high quality, still can't hide my strength. Deduce again. 30 million points of spiritual energy were consumed. Hiding mystery technique, heaven level, divine quality, a technique that can change one's realm, but can't hide the potential of one's spiritual heritage. Seeing that the cost of this technique had reached 100 million points, Han Fei smiled bitterly. Sure enough, any technique, as long as it was deduced to the extreme, would consume an astronomical amount of spiritual energy. This time, Han Fei's eyes lit up. Got it. Art of Deception, Venerable Level, Low Quality. Introduction. The myriad Tao concealment mystic technique is a combination of the characteristics of tens of thousands of hallucinatory creatures in the ocean. Through a unique method of channeling spiritual energy, a deception pearl can be produced. It can be used to change one's strength, realm, smell, appearance, and body shape without limit. Disadvantage 1. Easy to lose yourself. Disadvantage 2. Can't compare to the realm above your own. Deduced art. Unknown deduction cost. 0/500 million note. Sometimes the art of deception can even deceive yourself. You must stay true to yourself. Han Fei took a breath. This technique is so powerful that it can even deceive me? No wonder it can deceive others. Besides, this art of deception can store the power of different identities, strengths, and auras through the cultivation pearl. This is simply a divine disguise technique. Well, although the name is a bit too ordinary, it's better than the hidden mystic technique, isn't it? Gudu. When Han Fei was deducing, the old turtle didn't dare to say a word, because he found that his head was spinning as if it was unconsciously running with Han Fei's divine sense. Also, the old turtle saw that the spiritual energy in Han Fei's forged the universe was consumed rapidly. After a while, the 150 million points of spiritual energy were almost gone. Where did it go? Needless to say, the demon purification pot must have taken it. This made the old turtle wonder. Han Fei could indeed control the demon purification pot to do something. But what exactly could it do? He didn't know. Han Fei slightly suppressed his excitement. This time, he was going to deduce 4 techniques. Conservatively speaking, more than half of the spiritual spring would be consumed. Of course, he couldn't neglect it. Han Fei's eyes immediately turned to the soul-splitting technique. He chose to temporarily give up the Great Soul hosting technique. The original intention of the Great Soul hosting technique was purely for possession. It was a technique of possession. This kind of technique was more like self-preservation. It would be more effective when he was in a life-and-death situation and trying to make a comeback. However, possession also meant losing his own cultivation, didn't it? And the subsequent deduction of the soul-splitting technique was the soul-splitting path. The word path attracted Han Fei's attention. Deduce. 100 million points of spiritual energy evaporated without a trace, and the old turtle's pupils constricted again. Although 100 million points of spiritual energy was actually not much in his eyes. But to devour this amount of spiritual energy in an instant, one must at least be above the king level. But if one really reached the king level, who would devour ordinary spiritual energy? In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Soul-splitting path, venerable level, high quality. Introduction, the soul-splitting technique. This technique can tear apart the soul and attach it to another body. It can be used to control living beings that have no consciousness, and it can also be used to kill the souls of low-level living beings. When the body is destroyed, it can forcibly deprive a large number of souls, absorb the power of the souls, and maintain the soul for possession. This is the immortal soul-splitting path. Anyone who takes this path has a chance to become a king. Deduce. Unable to deduce note. This technique has returned to the path of cultivation. It can be practiced, but it cannot be deduced. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What's going on? Has this technique already entered the path of cultivation? The soul-splitting technique was originally a heaven-level, divine-quality technique, but after only one deduction, it reached the soul-splitting path, which was an immortal soul-splitting path. Han Fei didn't believe it. I only spent 100 million points of spiritual energy, and I've entered the path of cultivation? Immortal soul-splitting path? Why does it feel like a cheap commodity? Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Old turtle, to what level can I become immortal? Seeing that the demon purification pot had just stopped spinning, the old turtle didn't dare to argue with Han Fei, so he immediately replied, Immortality. If you're talking about immortality in the general sense, then it's the immortality state. However, you should be able to understand that in this world, there is no such thing as immortality, not even for gods. Han Fei nodded. Immediately, Han Fei sneered at the soul-splitting path. As the old saying went, cheap stuff didn't get good stuff. If the soul-splitting path was really so awesome, the Snow God's temple wouldn't have been destroyed so easily with this technique. Although disappointed with the soul-splitting path, Han Fei wasn't panicked. Although it was cheap, he could still use it. He just didn't regard it as his own path. Then, Han Fei finally focused his eyes on the Heaven's Extended Technique. The Heaven's Extended Technique was already at the venerable level, but the cost of deduction was still 100 million points. Han Fei wasn't panicked at all. Deduce. When the 100 million points of spiritual energy disappeared again, the demon purification pot spun again, and the old turtle slightly shivered. He didn't know what Han Fei was doing exactly. Why did this calabash have to consume 100 million points of spiritual energy? Why did it have to consume another 100 million points of spiritual energy? Did it have to cost so much to raise a calabash? Han Fei didn't know what the old turtle was thinking. He stared for a moment, and the information in his eyes changed again. Evolution technique, venerable level, high quality. Introduction. Observe the wonders of the evolution of creatures. You can completely deduce the evolution and mutation methods of 3 kinds of creatures. You can simulate their aura and completely transform into such creatures without being detected. After the evolution, you will be no different from a sea demon heavenly talent. After the evolution, you can only undergo another evolution 1 day later. Mutated creatures, half mermaid, Atlantean, merman deduced art, unknown deduction cost, 0/500 million note. You can control or command some sea creatures with your aura. Atlantean? Han Fei was about to ask the old turtle, but he wondered if the old turtle would be able to tell what he was doing from his behavior if he asked. Forget it. I won't ask anymore. Han Fei thought for a moment. He had never seen the so-called Atlantean, so he wouldn't transform in that direction. It was even more impossible for the Merman clan. They were too special and rare in the capital. They were definitely nobles among the sea clans. Han Fei wouldn't choose them either. So, in the end, he could only transform into a half-mermaid. But unlike before, there was no risk of being exposed. This meant that if he mutated again, he would become a real half-mermaid. The difference between the evolution technique and the deception technique was that one could really transform, while the other could really deceive. In the end, Han Fei quickly focused his eyes on the divine healing technique. Han Fei glanced at it. The deduction cost of the divine healing technique was only 10 million points. At that time, Han Fei smiled. Maybe the divine healing technique was so useful that he neglected its real level. Deduced. A moment later, information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Healing radiance, heaven level, low quality. Introduction. Spiritual energy has a radiance, which is called the healing divine radiance. The divine radiance connects spiritual energy, nourishes billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The healing radiance is pure and is separated from the method of stripping the healing radiance from spiritual energy. Deduced art. Holy light technique spiritual energy consumption. 50 million points. Han Fei blinked. F*CK. I seem to have neglected an important thing. Top. Chapter 12:12. Healing was one of the basic skills of a spirit gatherer. However, both the healing and the divine healing technique always used healing radiance. This kind of power actually existed between heaven and earth, floating in the void. The difference between the healing and the divine healing technique was that the divine healing technique could obtain more healing radiance in a short period of time. It didn't mean that the divine healing technique had more extraordinary features than the healing technique. For example, this healing radiance was only heaven level, low quality, but Han Fei knew that it was probably much stronger than the divine healing technique. The only thing that puzzled Han Fei was why the power that a spirit gatherer could master was always of a low level. At least he had never heard of anyone who had a particularly powerful healing technique. Of course, he didn't remember that Diwu Haiguang had also used this technique on him. But this didn't prevent Han Fei from continuing to deduce. If this healing radiance was only heaven-level, low quality, then there should be a more powerful healing technique. Deduce. This time, the new information refreshed Han Fei. Holy light technique, heaven-level, high quality. Introduction. There's radiance between heaven and earth, which is called healing divine radiance. The divine radiance connects with the origin of the void, nourishes billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The radiance is bundled and can become holy light. When the holy light descends, miracles are born. Deduced art. Holy light changed spiritual energy consumption. 200 million points. When he saw this information, Han Fei frowned. The introduction of the holy light technique had changed a little, but it was not the key. It was only heaven-level, high quality, and miracles were about to be born. It seemed that the path of a spirit gatherer wasn't simple. Seeing that the deduction cost had become 200 million points, Han Fei immediately looked at his spiritual spring that still had more than 1 billion points. He didn't panic at all and continued to deduce. After a while, the information appeared again. Holy light chain, heaven level, divine quality. Introduction. There is radiance between heaven and earth, which is called healing divine radiance. The divine radiance connects with the origin of the void, nourishes billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The radiance is bundled and shines on all creatures, forming healing chains that heal all wounded creatures within the illuminated range. Healing range. The healing range varies according to the strength, pattern, and realm. Deduced art. Apocalyptic divine technique spiritual energy consumption. 1 billion points note. The current range is 1,000 meters. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. This was something he had never heard of before. If someone on the Scattered Stars Island had this holy light chain, they would definitely be super popular. Wherever he went, he would be worshipped. However, what tempted Han Fei most was the apocalyptic divine art. The path of a spirit gatherer was definitely not easy. Even the Beast King art, which was also a heaven-level divine quality, only cost 500 million to deduce, while the Heavenly Awakening art cost 1 billion. It could be seen that the level of this derivation technique was probably even higher than the Beast King art. Glancing at the spiritual spring, Han Fei thought that he would be poor again in the blink of an eye. Heh, push. Han Fei suddenly grinned. He dared to give up 5 million caddies of spiritual spring and blow up the iceberg city. What was a mere 1 billion points of spiritual energy? At most, he could just snatch it himself. Deduce. Buzz. The old turtle had been observing Han Fei. However, suddenly, he saw that Han Fei's spiritual spring was almost emptied. The massive amount of spiritual spring water was suddenly sucked away, leaving the old tortoise dumbfounded. The old tortoise knew that Han Fei must be doing something big. 1 billion points of spiritual energy was not a yellow croaker that could be fished out easily. At the same time, in the outside world, in the realm of ice, oh no, on the battlefield of the entire waterwood sky, the sky rumbled, the clouds and mist were broken, and the sun was shining. The venerables all looked up at the sky, and there seemed to be a subtle power blooming. On the battlefield, someone was fighting passionately. Zhou Fa was covered in blood, and the longbow in his hand had been broken. The 3 shrimp soldiers in front of him were attacking him. He knew that he couldn't escape. Zhou Fa roared, "Even if I die, I won't die in the hands of the Sea Clan." A shrimp soldier's face changed drastically. Not good. He's going to explode himself. Retreat. When the 3 shrimp soldiers retreated, suddenly, a beam of light suddenly fell from the sky and shone directly on Zhou Fa's body. Zhou Fa's spiritual energy had been circulating and he was about to explode. However, as soon as this beam of light fell, he felt as if he were lying on a soft sandbed. That kind of sourness, that kind of beauty, directly made him forget what he was prepared to do. In extreme comfort, the wounds on Zhou Fa's body, large and small, were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the puncture wound on his abdomen and the broken leg bone were healing quickly. After a full 3 breaths, Zhou Fa finally regained his senses. His face was full of shock. His injuries had actually recovered by more than half in an instant. Not just Zhou Fa, but many humans on the battlefield were also enveloped by the beams of light. The scene was just like the billions of beams of light that shot down from the sky in ancient times. It was extremely shocking. Those who didn't know better might think that aliens were attacking Earth. In the holy light, someone exclaimed, "My wounds are all healed." Someone roared, "I feel energetic. I can fight again." A spirit gatherer was shocked. "Who is it? Did Her Majesty take action in person?" A venerable was dumbfounded. "No, this is not the power of a king at all. It's more like the manifestation of a great Tao. That's why it has such a terrifying healing ability." And soon, both the Shimu heaven and the sea demons discovered that those who could be baptized by the white light on the entire battlefield were all seriously injured humans. Even a fool knew that this matter was definitely related to the human experts. A bug roared. "Has a great master of the human race appeared?" The Sky Clan hovered and looked around, trying to find the person who attacked. The 9 venerables of the human race. "Oh no." Yu Qin, who had just made a breakthrough in the bloody battle, were all shocked. Wu Shang murmured, "Is the human king back?" The Life Queen and the king of the Sea Clan were all shocked. They looked up at the sky solemnly. The Cold King said, "It's impossible for a new king to be born in this desolate land. I'm curious, what on earth has the Shumu heaven been planning recently?" The Life Queen ignored him and slightly turned her head, but she was slightly unhappy in her heart. Is this the Apocalypse divine technique? The unparalleled great Tao of a spirit gatherer has been revealed at this moment. At this moment, Han Fei, who was hiding in Forge the Universe, didn't feel anything. He was staring at the Apocalypse divine technique in a daze. Apocalypse divine technique, unrated, introduction. The Apocalypse divine technique is also known as the Immortal divine technique. This technique connects with the origin of the void and summons infinite healing light at the cost of one's life. Under the illumination of Apocalypse, evil spirits are purified and wounds are healed. Effect 1. Healing light. According to the condition of the wounded body, a lot of spiritual energy will be consumed to quickly heal the wounded body. Effect 2. Life overdraft. The caster can use the Apocalypse divine power at the cost of his life in exchange for the recovery of the wounded body. Effect 3. The Apocalypse Great Tao. Those who practice this Great Tao will master the Apocalypse Great Tao and their lifespan will be doubled. The effect of life overdraft will gradually decrease as one's strength grows. Deduction. Cannot be deduced, can only be comprehended spiritual energy consumption. Unknown note. The Apocalypse divine technique is just the beginning. The Apocalypse Great Tao is the return of a spirit gatherer. Gudu. When he saw this information, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Did I deduce another Great Tao? The soul-splitting path just now only required 100 million points of spiritual energy to deduce, but this Apocalypse divine technique was 10 times more expensive. That's more like a Great Tao. Besides, the Apocalypse divine technique also said that this was just the beginning of the Apocalypse Great Tao, which meant that he had spent 1 billion points of spiritual energy and finally found the beginning of a Great Tao. Han Fei's heart sank. He discovered a phenomenon. It seemed that once a combat skill reached the venerable level, if he continued to deduce it, it would no longer be a combat skill itself, but a great path. Didn't it mean that combat skills almost came to an end when they reached the venerable level? Because after that, it was the Great Tao. If you didn't enter the Tao, how could you learn this strongest secret technique? It was exactly because of this that Han Fei was quite hesitant. Did he really have to choose one of these Great Tao? Although the main purpose of an explorer was to explore the Great Tao and the direction of his own Great Tao. If he could deduce Great Tao one by one. In the end, there were so many Great Tao in front of him, but he could only choose one? How King uncomfortable is this? Han Fei finally couldn't help but ask, "Old Turtle, can each person only take one Great Tao?" The Old Turtle. The old turtle had been waiting for Han Fei to speak. However, he didn't expect that Han Fei would ask this question. The question was, why did Han Fei ask this question? The old turtle couldn't help but say, it's already very rare for ordinary people to get one great Tao. Han Fei keenly grasped a word. Ordinary people? Han Fei asked. What about abnormal people? For example, those peerless heavenly talents, geniuses? There was doubt in the old turtle's eyes, but he still explained, when I say ordinary people, it's just an ordinary situation. A person usually chooses a great Tao in the end, because the further you go, you will find that the great Tao is too difficult to walk. You can't even clearly tell how many great Tao you have walked. Because of this, some people began to think that since one great Tao can't be taken, then take another one. It's just that. Han Fei hurriedly asked, but what? The old turtle sneered. No matter how you go, you have to take a great Tao. This is the path that you must choose in the end. You can give up everything else, but you can't let go of this great Tao. Even if you want to take more than one great Tao at the same time, you need to determine one great Tao. Otherwise, if your understanding of the great Tao is not strong enough and your Tao is not deep enough, you won't be able to take any other great Tao. Han Fei was silent for a long time. I see. So, how many great Tao can a person take? The old turtle was so angry that he laughed. As many as you want to take. However, the more great Tao you take, the more unclear your great Tao will be. At that time, you want to know how to take that great Tao. In the end, if you make a difficult choice, your Tao heart will be unstable and all the great Tao will collapse. You will be stuck in the semi-venerable realm or the semi-king realm for the rest of your life. Apex. Chapter 12:13. Hearing the old turtle's explanation, Han Fei immediately understood. So, in fact, in the final analysis, it was not certain which path to take. Even ordinary explorers could take many paths. At this stage, being able to create a grand Tao of quintessence was the crux of the problem. Han Fei curled his lips casually. Since there are thousands of great Taos, why are there still so many people who can't become venerables? Thousands of great Taos? The old turtle chuckled. If you want everyone to find their own great Tao, then there are indeed thousands of great Taos. Huh? What do you mean? The old turtle said disdainfully. Actually, it is not difficult to enter the Tao. As long as you are an explorer, you can understand a path. Of course, just this step alone was something that very few people could accomplish. What is really difficult is not to enter the Tao, but the quality of the Tao itself. Why do so many venerables stop at the half-king realm? Because their path is only enough for them to reach the half-king realm, which great Tao can be casually entered by anyone who can become a monarch. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Is it not difficult to enter the Tao? Han Fei already understood. The old turtle had been an emperor for so long that he had probably forgotten that for ordinary people, it was already extremely difficult to enter the Tao. Besides, it was not easy to go to the extreme of a great Tao. What made Han Fei guess was that the old turtle said that many people walk their own great Tao. The implication was that in addition to their own great Tao, there were other great Tao that everyone could walk. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, so there are some great Tao in this world that most people can walk together? The old turtle nodded. Of course, the 5 major professions of a human race, the insect clan's explosive force technique, the sky clan's speed technique, and the demonic plant clan's accumulation technique. These are the most basic great Tao. They can be walked together, but they can't coexist. Han Fei was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? What do you mean by they can be walked together, but they can't coexist? The old turtle sneered. Think about it. If there is someone who walks exactly the same great Tao as you, what will you do? Han Fei was stunned for a moment. What can I do? The old turtle chuckled. Of course you will swallow him. Our great Tao is the same. As long as you take his great Tao, won't your great Tao of origin be several times more powerful than before? This, you can do that. Han Fei's eyes widened. This is 2F asterisk king outrageous. So, he could snatch someone else's Tao. If he could keep robbing and robbing, wouldn't he not need to cultivate? The old turtle said, Of course, many of the great Tao of origins that we snatched are comprehended by ourselves. There won't be a situation where our strength will multiply. However, on the same great Tao, the stronger one was, the harder it would be for them to coexist. Therefore, even if the great Taos were the same, those who ultimately walked this path were all mortal enemies. Therefore, although some Taos are common, there are very, very few who can walk at the peak. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. Then, according to what you said, the 5 major professions of mankind will all be enemies in the end, won't they? The old turtle said leisurely. Have you ever wondered how the 5 major professions came to be? Could it be a trap set up by a top expert of this path? They specialize in hunting those who have matured. Kings of the 5 professions? Hiss! Han Fei was dumbfounded. He was so shocked that he was burnt to a crisp. Yeah, the 5 major professions give people a direction. However, who knows if this is a road of no return? Since the experts who walk on the same great Tao and spread the 5 major professions, why do they have to set up so many competitors for themselves? Han Fei couldn't help but shiver. The great Tao was 2F** king deep. He couldn't think about it at all. The old turtle said again, especially for people like you, on your invincible path, there must be heavenly talents of other races who walk the invincible path. If you really walk on this path, when you're strong enough, you will find that everyone you meet at that time can be called invincible. Isn't it scary? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. So, the reason why the invincible path is so dangerous is because of this great Tao? The old turtle chuckled. You also know that the invincible path is dangerous? Many people just know it, but they don't know why. However, it doesn't hurt to tell you this. The great Tao of origins will attract each other. Even many kings don't understand this truth. Han Fei. The old turtle said, no matter what great Tao it is, it will follow a strange rule. They will always attract each other, meet each other, and fight each other in a certain way at a certain moment. Not only do origins attract each other, but also things that promote the growth of origins will also attract you. You will understand this rule after you become a venerable. However, mortals call this rule luck. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. So, it may be difficult to even enter the great Tao if you walk on your own. But if you walk on an existing great Tao, you may also become a leek for others. What is a leek? Han Fei took a breath. A plant that can be harvested once it grows. The old turtle said leisurely, most people are not even qualified to be leeks. Han Fei's heart sank. In any case, according to the old turtle, then whether it is the invincible path or the heavenly enlightenment path, it is extremely difficult to walk. For the former, after you enter the great Tao, you may encounter a super strong master who also walks on the invincible path. For the latter, you may directly become a leek. Han Fei immediately took a breath. No, in 3 years, I will return to the Yin-Yang heaven and find a way to inform Luo Xiaobai and the others. I don't want to be harvested by others when I cultivate to the extreme. That would be a great loss. The old turtle said, actually, you don't have to be so nervous. Even if they were to be harvested, they had to have the capital to be harvested. You're only a junior explorer now. What you should think about is how to reach the peak as soon as possible. When you reach the peak, you can take your time to think about what great Tao to take. Han Fei let out a sigh of relief. The old turtle's words were reasonable. He was indeed thinking too much now. As for what path to choose, that was something he should think about when he reached the peak of the explorer realm. When he reached the peak of the explorer realm, he could at least guarantee that he would be able to dominate the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven, right? At that time, even if he couldn't defeat a venerable, he would still have the strength of a junior venerable, so he wouldn't be able to run away. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately said, that makes sense. Han Fei took a deep breath. He did not immediately practice the new technique that he had just deduced. Instead, he made up his mind. Swish, Little Gold, Nine Tails, Little Fatty, and Licking Dog all came out. Meow, meow. Licking Dog turned into an electric arc and was about to pounce on Han Fei. Han Fei raised his foot and kicked. From now on, every time you meow, I will kick you. I will kick you until you doubt your dog life. Zizi. Ninetails quickly crawled to Han Fei's side, rubbing against Han Fei while fiddling with Licking Dog, who had been kicked away with his nine tails. Licking Dog had never seen such a scene before. Although it was an ancient mutant, it was also a legendary big shot. In front of him, 3 of them suddenly appeared. Besides, judging from their auras, they were about to become law enforcers. Little Gold tilted his head and looked at Licking Dog as if wondering why there were such strange creatures in this world. Little Fatty's round eyes rolled, looked at Licking Dog for a while, and then lost interest. Instead, he looked at Han Fei. Breakthrough. With a thought, 4 big pits appeared and forged the universe. In each pit, there were about 50,000 caddies of spirit awakening fluid, which was completely incomparable to the nearly 1 million caddies he had before. These were all freshly looted, and most of them were not looted from Tao-seeking state monsters, because spirit awakening fluid was not very useful to them. These spirit awakening fluid were basically looted from the Free Trade Valley. Han Fei hesitated and said, "You guys have reached the peak of your strength for a long time. Although there is not much spirit awakening fluid, it should be enough for you to make a breakthrough." Unlike him, when his strength soared all the way, he was still in the reincarnation and couldn't think of them at all. Later, they left the Ideal Palace and went to the Wind and Rain Village, where ordinary fisheries couldn't help them make a breakthrough and were more likely to be discovered. Therefore, Han Fei simply didn't let them live. However, from now on, Han Fei needed to find a way to push the Ninetails and the others to a new level. In 3 years, he thought, I should at least upgrade the Ninetails and the others to level 60. Even then, Han Fei felt it was a bit low. After all, he was already an explorer. Master, who are these?" Simp Licking jumped over with a swish and looked up at Han Fei, his eyes full of curiosity. Han Fei said lightly, "The Ninetails is your eldest brother, Little Gold is your second brother, and Little Fatty is your third brother." Then, Han Fei introduced, "This is Old Four. His name is Simp Licking Dog." "Woof. Master, it's Tengu." Han Fei nodded. "Yes, Simp Licking Dog." Simp Licking Dog. Han Fei kicked him. "All of you, go swallow the spirit awakening fluid. If anyone can't make a breakthrough after swallowing it, I will throw you into the sea demon nest." Swish. Except for Little Fatty, the Ninetails and the others, with a swish, jumped into the spirit awakening fluid. Han Fei thought, next time, I have to let Little Black and Little White make a breakthrough. After all, Little Black and Little White were his spiritual beasts. Why were they always stuck at level 59? At this moment, the old turtle asked in confusion, "Is that 9-death soul splitting octopus?" Vertex. Chapter 12:14. Han Fei was deeply surprised that the old turtle knew Little Fatty. He asked excitedly, "Do you know it?" The old turtle was silent for a long time. "Why did the 9-death soul splitting octopus recognize you as its master?" Han Fei thought, "How can I tell you that?" However, the old turtle said leisurely, "I'm afraid it has something to do with this calabash." Han Fei said gloomily, "Just say it. What's wrong with the 9-death soul splitting octopus?" The old turtle pondered and said, "Nothing, just an accident. Because I once met one. Although it only had the strength of a king, it could shake the emperor. Later, after the 9-death soul splitting octopus was resurrected for the last time, it seemed to be eaten by the sea-swallowing demon whale." Han Fei took a breath. "A king? Was it eaten?" The old turtle snorted. "Can a king be eaten? Let me remind you, the so-called contractual spiritual beast is just an independent Great Tao contract. If you really want them to enter the Great Tao, you have to let them cultivate instead of piling up resources." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "What they die outside?" The old turtle's voice buzzed. "They haven't experienced bloody battles. Even if you raise them to enter the Great Tao, what can you do? Then where did their ancestors come from? Were they raised by someone else?" Han Fei nodded. That seemed to make sense. Half a day later, to Han Fei's great disappointment, something happened. Except for the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold and Little Fatty seemed to be a little bit short of a breakthrough. As for Simp Dog, he was the weakest one, but he was very good at drinking. He drank all the spirit awakening fluid, raising his level from 41 to 45. The speed of his advancement caused the old turtle to sneer and say that his method was incorrect. Hanfei didn't care whether it was right or not. The old turtle did have a point. Contractual spiritual beasts also had to grow. How strong could they be if they kept them? As for worrying about the death of the contractual spiritual beasts, didn't he also go through a lot of trouble? If they could not be raised as independent individuals, who cared if they were legendary or ancient mutants? Could they compare to real legendary creatures? It could be said that so far, when Hanfei used the nine-tailed mantis shrimp or little gold, he only used them to make powerful moves. Once the ultimate move was over, their mission was basically completed. At this moment, information emerged in Hanfei's eyes. Name: nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Introduction: a mutated mantis shrimp with swift speed and extremely powerful attack power. It is adept at hiding itself and ambushing its prey. Its 9 tails transform into 9 divine chains, making it extremely powerful. Level 50 quality. Legendary, contains spiritual energy greater than 18,852 points. Food. Omnivorous, prefers shrimp's battle skill. Void chain, soul-piercing 9 tails. Remarks: current state. Growth period. Hanfei's expression changed slightly. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp only had one more combat skill called 9-tailed soul piercing. Judging from the name, it should be a type of soul skill. However, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was only level 50, which was equivalent to a sea demon. Even the fiercest one was only a peak level sea demon. Little Gold even peeked at him from time to time. Little Fatty, who was not afraid of boiling water, collapsed to the ground. Only the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was very happy. It sent a message to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Am I awesome now that I've made a breakthrough? Bang! Hanfei kicked it away. None of them made a breakthrough, but you did. It shows that your potential is not as good as others. Why are you so cocky? The dog shivered and thought to himself, this master is a bit fierce. My big brother is a bit miserable. Swish! The dog had jumped to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, licked him with his big tongue, and comforted him. Big brother, don't be afraid. I'm weaker than you. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't stand being licked. With a flip of her body, her delicate figure directly sent the simp flying. Hanfei was speechless. With a thought, he took them all back. At this moment, Hanfei only felt tired. It seemed that the more contractual spiritual beasts he had, the better. Yes, since he went out, he really had to let them go in the next 3 years. If he didn't let them go, the legendary creatures would be crippled by him. 3 days later. Hanfei struggled on the ground for a while. It didn't hurt, but his flesh and blood were a little tight, and his physique was changing. When Hanfei changed from a half-mermaid to a more handsome half-mermaid, he let out a sigh of relief and said, "Wow, it turns out that demonic energy can run so smoothly." The old turtle couldn't help but say, your transformation technique seems to have become more powerful. Even I didn't see that you were a fake." Hanfei thought to himself, if you can see that, then there must be something wrong. I'm now an authentic sea demon, with pure bloodline and demonic energy. If I practice the demon god scripture, I'll definitely be a peerless heavenly talent among sea demons. So Hanfei unhurriedly began to practice the art of deception. After all, he had come from the waves and gone through the wind. He had seen and gotten to know all sorts of living beings. Even in this Forge the Universe, there were a pile of sea demon corpses, some of which were imitations. After more than an hour, Hanfei visualized thousands of creatures and finally chose a half-mermaid that no one knew. It looked like Yu Hanjia, one of the 8 wings of blue demons of the yin-yang sky. He looked a little gloomy. Is this the breath-concealing technique? No, it's aura simulation. Oh yes, it's the breath-concealing technique, but it's quite clever. Why haven't I seen you use it before? Hanfei curled his lips. Because I never thought of pretending to be a sea demon before. Now I'm gonna blend in. Hanfei didn't care whether the old turtle believed him or not. Anyway, the old turtle already knew enough of his secrets. But for now, he had to get out of here first. Han Fei grabbed the array diagram in his hand and said, "Old turtle, after we go out, in case the venerable is still there, you have to block the enemy's vision. But you have to block the enemy's vision." The old turtle frowned. "I can cover it for at most 1 second. After all, I'm seriously injured now." Han Fei curled his lips. "Hee, if I can't run away, you will die too. We are on the same boat. You should understand the saying that we are in the same boat." Sure that the old turtle must have a way to do it, Han Fei thought of something and appeared in the void. In this void, Han Fei tore the space without hesitation. After all, compared with the outside world, none of the creatures that could travel in the void were weak, so he had to be careful. Swish! At the moment when Han Fei tore the void, the old turtle suddenly said, "1 second." At the moment when Han Fei tore the void, the fish skin diagram in his hand unfolded, and a complicated long-distance teleportation array appeared. The moment he stepped out of the void, Han Fei seemed to hear a humph. However, no matter how fast the venerable was, it still needed time to react. Han Fei had already stepped into the teleportation array. In the next moment, Han Fei shook his body and became half a head taller. His aura changed from a junior explorer to an advanced sea spirit. More than 8,000 kilometers away, Han Fei appeared in an ice canyon and wandered around as if nothing had happened. Han Fei asked, "Old turtle, did you get rid of them?" The old turtle said, "Fortunately, you prepared the array diagram in advance. Otherwise, even if I cover you, I'm afraid you can't escape. There are venerables guarding you. It seems that you disappeared too mysteriously before and were noticed by him. If this time, he was just not sure if you were nearby, then next time, he will definitely wait for you in the place where you disappeared." Han Fei's heart trembled. If this is the case, I can't expose myself again. Otherwise, how can I run if someone is waiting for me? Han Fei didn't dare to release his perception too much at this moment, but asked, "Where are we now?" The old turtle asked, "Didn't you draw the teleportation array?" Han Fei replied, "It's random. Do you think I can teleport to a fixed location in this situation?" The old turtle glanced around and said with some confusion, "If there is no accident, this place should not be far from the place where you blew up last time, no more than 3,000 kilometers away." "Oh, so close?" The old turtle said, "That city was blown up by you. It's being rebuilt now." As soon as the old turtle said this, a team of half-mermaids swam over 300 kilometers away from Han Fei. Before Han Fei left, someone said to him via voice transmission, "Who's in front?" "Wait a moment." Hearing that, Han Fei paused and pretended to look around. When the other party was 200 kilometers away, he looked at the team. This person's perception is not weak. The female half-mermaid in the lead was surprised. Before she arrived, she had already spoken telepathically. "You don't look familiar." Han Fei suddenly had an idea. "I just came back from the ice city wall." Immediately, a half-mermaid shouted, "What? How dare you flee at the last minute?" Han Fei frowned. It seems that the frontline battle is not over yet. Han Fei immediately said in a domineering tone, "Don't talk nonsense. You Hanjia, am not the kind of person who would run away from a battle. I just sensed that I was about to make a breakthrough in the battle, so I made an exception and came back. But my home is gone." Hearing this, the leading half-mermaid immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "It turns out that you are about to make a breakthrough. Congratulations." Immediately, a half-mermaid cursed, "Not only your home is gone, but all our homes are gone. I don't know which bastard blew up the Ice Mountain City." Hundreds of millions of creatures were killed. The scene at that time was too horrible to look at. So far, no one knows what happened in the city that day. Someone added, "This matter is a mystery. Everyone who knows it is dead. Even the venerable didn't find out the secret." The leading half-mermaid said, "Okay, let's cut the crap. By the way, you Hanja, when do you want to make a breakthrough?" Han Fei wondered, "How did I kill hundreds of millions of creatures?" These half-mermaids are really good at bragging. Thinking that he still had to run away, Han Fei immediately replied, "I feel that it will happen in a moment. Just now, I was looking for a place to make a breakthrough." The leading half-mermaid said, "Forget it. The situation is turbulent now. How about this? We will protect you. We make a breakthrough and reach the peak level of the sea spirit realm. You can join our patrol team. Han Fei didn't know what to say. I'm F asterisk King running away. Don't you guys have any eyesight or knowledge? At this moment, Han Fei really wanted to kill these idiots. But if he did it now, the consequences would be unpredictable. Who knew if there would be a venerable watching? Helplessly, Han Fei could only agree. Okay.